Welcome, weary traveller. You have arrived at the threshold of a forgotten time, a quiet sanctuary where the weight of the modern world simply dissolves into the mountain mist. Take a long, slow breath in, drawing the crisp, untethered air deep into your lungs, and let it out with a gentle sigh, releasing the burdens of your day. Tonight, we journey far away from the loud noise and the frantic rush, travelling back to the year 1840. We are ascending the emerald slopes of the Himalayas, where the air grows thin and sweet, carrying the faint, earthy aroma of damp pine needles and ancient, resting stone. The sky above is a canvas of deep, velvet indigo, just beginning to soften at its eastern edge. Here, time moves differently. It does not march, it simply breathes, rising and falling with the rhythmic slumber of the valleys below. As you close your eyes, imagine the cool, comforting weight of a woven blanket settling over your shoulders. You are entirely safe here, sheltered by the towering silhouettes of snow-capped peaks that stand as silent sentinels against the night. The world is entirely still, save for the whisper of a high-altitude breeze brushing through the silver-tipped tea leaves. Let your mind drift on this gentle current, surrendering to the profound, unbroken peace of a history long past, waiting softly in the quiet dawn, ready to unfold its secrets to those who simply pause, listen, and allow themselves to softly drift away. Before we step fully into the misty, waking shadows of the mountain tea gardens, I invite you to find your own permanent place within this tranquil sanctuary. If you find solace in these quiet journeys through the corridors of time, consider lightly pressing the small subscribe button. By joining our restful community, you ensure that there will always be a warm, comforting narrative waiting for you whenever the modern world feels too heavy to carry. Subscribing is a gentle whisper of support, a soft gesture that allows us to continue unearthing these sleepy histories, crafting these detailed tapestries of sound and memory just for you. Think of it as leaving a small glowing lantern on the porch of a peaceful cabin, guaranteeing that you will always find your way back to this haven of relaxation. As you settle deeper into your pillows, feeling the mattress rise up to support your tired muscles, know that your presence here is cherished. We travel these forgotten paths together, leaving no footprints, only gathering the serene ambience of days long gone. So relax your brow, unclench your jaw, and allow the subtle invitation to rest gently in your mind. There is absolutely no rush, no pressure, only the steady, comforting promise of many more peaceful dawns to explore. Now, as the indigo sky slowly begins to thin into a pale, translucent lavender over the towering Himalayan ridges, let us return to the year 1840 and softly begin our ascent. The village of the tea porters does not emerge all at once from the long, deep night. Rather, it is slowly revealed by the gentle shifting tides of the morning mist. This mist is not merely a cloud that has settled upon the earth, but a living, breathing entity that moves with a slow, deliberate grace, wrapping itself around the sturdy stone dwellings like a soft, translucent shawl woven from spun silver and morning dew. It clings to the rugged contours of the mountain, filling every crevice and valley with a pale, luminous vapour that softens all edges and muffles all sounds, creating a cocoon of absolute, undisturbed tranquility. As the first faint hints of the approaching dawn begin to bleed into the eastern sky, a subtle wash of bruised lilac and fading indigo, the mist captures this nascent light, glowing faintly from within, like a massive dormant pearl resting upon the slopes of the Himalayas. You can almost feel the cool, damp weight of it against your skin, a refreshing kiss of moisture that carries the pure, unadulterated essence of the high peaks, free from the dust and ash of the lowlands. The air is so crisp, so achingly clear beneath this blanket of fog, that every breath feels like a cleansing draught, washing away the fatigue of the journey and leaving behind only a profound sense of stillness. The mist rolls and curls in slow motion, pulling back briefly to reveal the dark, wet silhouette of a jagged rock or the drooping, heavy branches of a solitary Himalayan cedar, only to swallow them up once more in its gentle, creeping embrace. Beneath this protective layer of vapour, The architecture of the porter's settlement sits harmoniously upon the steeply pitched landscape born entirely from the very mountain it rests upon. There are no straight, unnatural lines here, no harsh angles imposed by foreign hands. Instead, the dwellings seem to have grown organically from the rocky soil, constructed from roughly hewn blocks of local granite and dark weathered schist. These stones, gathered with immense patience and quiet reverence by generations of hardened hands, bear the unique, irregular textures of the earth, their surfaces pitted and scarred by centuries of wind and ice, yet holding within them an incredible comforting solidity. They are stacked with a meticulous, intuitive precision, fitted together like an ancient three-dimensional puzzle, without the need for binding mortar, relying solely on gravity and their own substantial weight to stand firm against the elements. If you were to run your fingers along these walls, you would feel the cold, rough grain of the stone, the soft, velvety patches of creeping moss that cling to the shaded crevices, and the deep, damp chill that seems to radiate from the very core of the rock. The roofs of these humble abodes are masterpieces of rustic engineering, tiled with overlapping slabs of dark, heavy slate that look like the scales of some slumbering, benevolent mountain creature. Each slate is completely unique in its shape and thickness, bearing the subtle, undulating ripples of the ancient riverbeds from which they were long ago split. In the quiet hush of this early hour, before the sun has even thought to crest the jagged peaks, the slate roofs are slick and shimmering with a heavy coating of nocturnal dew. The moisture gathers upon the uneven edges of the stone tiles, swelling into perfectly round crystalline droplets that reflect the dim ambient light of the morning before finally growing too heavy and surrendering to gravity. They fall with a slow, measured cadence, striking the hard, packed earth below with a soft, resonant plink, a natural, hypnotic metronome that marks the gentle passage of time in a world entirely devoid of clocks. This subtle rhythm of dripping water is the only sound that permeates the profound silence of the encampment, a lullaby of the mountain that soothes the sleeping minds of the porters resting within. The ground itself is a mosaic of trampled earth and smoothed stepping stones, worn into gentle depressions by decades of calloused, barefoot treads and the soft, shuffling steps of woven hemp sandals. The dirt is damp and rich, holding the deeply grounded, loamy scent of decaying pine needles, crushed alpine herbs, and the mineral tang of wet dust. Framed within these thick, sheltering walls of stone are heavy wooden doors, fashioned from the heartwood of ancient rhododendron trees and the resilient timber of the Himalayan blue pine. The wood has been seasoned by decades of exposure to the brutal alpine winters and the baking summer sun, aging into a rich, complex tapestry of silver grey, deep mahogany, and streaks of faded mossy green. The grain of the timber is deeply pronounced, swirling in hypnotic organic patterns that tell the silent history of the tree's slow, stubborn growth upon the windswept slope. If you were to look closely at the surface of one such door, you would see the myriad of tiny, intricate fissures and cracks that trace their way along the grain like the tributaries of a great river, filled with the accumulated dust of 1,000 journeys up and down the mountain paths. The doors hang upon hinges of hand-forged iron, thick and black, covered in a delicate powdery bloom of rust that speaks of the constant humidity of the cloud forest. These metal fixtures, shaped by the rhythmic strikes of a village blacksmith's hammer long ago, are heavy and deliberate, ensuring that when the door is closed against the biting night winds, it creates an impenetrable seal of warmth and safety for those huddled around the hearth inside. As the quiet dawn slowly stretches its limbs, the very first signs of life begin to stir from within these silent stone cocoons, announced not by voices or movement, but by the subtle, comforting language of smoke. From the low, square chimneys protruding from the slate roofs, thin, hesitant ribbons of pale grey vapour begin to rise, curling lazily into the damp morning air. This is the waking of the hearths, the kindling of the daily fires that serve as the beating luminous heart of every porter's home. The scent that accompanies this visual poetry is utterly intoxicating, a complex, deeply grounding fragrance that instantly evokes a feeling of profound domestic comfort and ancient tradition. It is a rich, earthy blend of dry, burning juniper sprigs which release a sweet, resinous, almost incense-like perfume into the atmosphere, mingling seamlessly with the deeper, more robust aroma of smouldering yak dung, the essential, slow-burning fuel of the high Himalayas. This smoke does not rise quickly. Instead, it is gently pressed down by the weight of the lingering mist, spreading outwards in a flat, hazy canopy that hovers just above the rooftops, bathing the entire encampment in a soft, fragrant fog. Let us linger for a moment beside one of the small, deep-set windows that puncture the thick stone walls. The windows are covered by solid wooden shutters, intricately carved with auspicious symbols, endless knots, and gentle lotus petals, designed to quietly ward off the biting winds and invite good fortune into the sleeping rooms. Even closed, tiny slivers of warm golden light begin to leak through the imperceptible cracks between the heavy wooden slats, escaping from the newly lit hearths within. This light is incredibly soft, flickering and dancing with the breath of the indoor fire, casting long, wavering, and entirely gentle shadows upon the mist outside. It is the colour of old amber, of melting honeycomb, radiating a silent promise of warmth and safety that perfectly counters the cool blue-grey tones of the awakening mountain. Stepping across the heavy, weathered threshold and slipping quietly into the interior of one such stone dwelling, one is immediately enveloped by an atmosphere of profound, insulated warmth, a stark and comforting contrast to the damp, clinging chill of the mountain mist lingering just outside the door. This enclosed space is a true sanctuary, a masterclass in the art of rustic, enduring comfort. The inner walls are not left as bare, exposed stone, rather they have been painstakingly coated with a thick, insulating layer of earth and plaster, a meticulously mixed compound of river clay, fine sand, and dried yak dung, smoothed by hand over countless generations. The surface of these walls is beautifully uneven, a soft, undulating topography of gentle curves and shallow depressions that bear the literal lasting impressions of the palms and fingertips that shaped them long ago. In the dim, wavering illumination of the early morning, this earthen canvas takes on the most mesmerizing hues, absorbing the light and reflecting it back into the room as a soft, diffused glow. It is the color of toasted almonds and rich, warm terracotta, a deeply grounding shade that seems to radiate a quiet, earthy contentment. The shadows that gather in the corners of the room are never harsh or angular. They are soft, velvety pools of deep charcoal and bruised purple, blending seamlessly into the warm apricot light to create an environment that entirely soothes the eyes and instantly calms the restless mind. At the very center of this intimate earthen womb lies the chula, the traditional sunken fire pit that serves as the radiant, beating heart of the porter's home. It is a simple, elegant depression in the packed earth floor, lined with smooth, rounded river stones that have been baked to a deep, lustrous black by decades of continuous, unwavering heat. Within this protective ring, the morning fire is just beginning to find its steady rhythm. There are no roaring flames here, no chaotic crackling to disturb the profound peace of the early hour. Instead, it is a slow, methodical combustion, an ancient, practiced art of maintaining a low, consistent, and intensely comforting heat. Beneath a soft, powdery blanket of snow-white ash, a bed of vibrant, glowing embers pulses with a deep, mesmerizing crimson light, breathing in and out with the subtle draughts that enter through the woven window shutters. Resting carefully upon these embers is a single, thick knot of aged juniper wood, its rough bark slowly surrendering to the heat. As the wood slowly carbonizes, a tiny, delicate ribbon of blue flame dances along its edge, accompanied by the impossibly soft, almost musical hiss of trapped sap gently escaping the timber. This delicate sound is the quietest of whispers, a natural, soothing white noise that lulls the senses into a state of deep, unresisting relaxation. Suspended just above this glowing bed of embers, balanced perfectly upon a tripod of blackened iron, rests a large spherical pot crafted from heavy, unglazed mountain clay. The exterior of the vessel is a textured map of its own history, coated in layers of baked-on soot and the fine white dust of wood ash, giving it a beautifully matte charcoal finish that seems to absorb the surrounding light. Inside this sturdy vessel, fresh spring water, drawn only hours ago from a glacial stream that filters through layers of granite and quartz, is just beginning to respond to the heat of the fire. It has not yet reached a boil. Rather, it is in that peaceful transitional stage where tiny shimmering pearls of oxygen begin to gather along the curved bottom of the clay pot. The water produces a low, resonant, and entirely hypnotic hum, a deep, continuous vibration that you can almost feel in your chest. It is the sound of deep anticipation, the gentle prelude to the brewing of the dark, strong, and deeply fortifying tea that will eventually fuel the porters on their long, arduous journeys up the steep, winding mountain passes. The vapor rising from the rim of the pot carries the pure, clean, and unmistakably sweet scent of melted snow and mineral-rich earth, mingling perfectly with the resinous perfume of the burning juniper to create an aroma that is both grounding and utterly transcendent. If you were to lean your head back and look toward the ceiling, you would find yourself gazing up into a shadowy canopy of massive hand-hewn timber rafters cut from the trunks of ancient towering Himalayan cedars. These beams, thick enough to support the immense weight of the slate roof and the heavy winter snows, are practically petrified by age and the continuous exposure to wood smoke. They possess a dark, glossy patina, a deep mahogany sheen that catches the faint amber light of the fire in long, shimmering streaks. Suspended from these sturdy wooden ribs are the gathered treasures of the mountain summer, hung upside down to slowly cure and dry in the warm, rising air of the hearth. There are thick, loosely tied bundles of wild mountain mint, their leaves dried to a soft, dusty sage green, releasing a faint, sweet, and incredibly refreshing fragrance that perfectly cuts through the heavier, smokier scents of the room. Beside them hang tightly woven bunches of tiny, pale yellow chamomile flowers, looking like captured drops of summer sunlight, offering their own delicate, apple-like perfume to the complex olfactory tapestry of the dwelling. Tucked carefully into the spaces between the rafters are small, rectangular pouches woven from split bamboo, containing precious, tightly rolled leaves of the region's earliest tea harvest, kept high and dry above the hearth to age and mature in the absolute protective warmth of the ceiling's highest, quietest reaches. Resting silently in the deepest, most tranquil shadow of the room, far from the direct heat of the fire, are the essential tools of the porter's arduous trade, waiting patiently for the day to truly begin. Standing upright against the earthen wall is the doko, the large conical basket woven from thick, resilient strips of mountain bamboo. To simply call it a basket is a disservice. It is a masterpiece of functional, enduring artistry. The bamboo is not the bright, raw green of a fresh cut, but has aged to a deep, magnificent honey gold, polished to a glass-like, frictionless sheen by the constant friction of calloused hands and coarse woolen garments. The weave is a hypnotic, repetitive pattern of over and under, creating a structure that is simultaneously incredibly strong and slightly yielding, designed to carry immense weights while absorbing the rhythmic shock of 1,000 footsteps upon uneven stone. If you were to run your fingers along the rim of the doko, you would feel the absolute smoothness of the aged bamboo, the slight comforting warmth it seems to hold within its fibers, and the incredible taut tension of the masterful weaving. Draped carefully over the rim of the golden bamboo basket is the namlo, the thick woven tumpling strap that will eventually rest across the porter's forehead, bearing the vast majority of the incredible burden. It is braided from incredibly tough, coarse jute fibers, yet the central portion, the part that makes intimate contact with the skin, has been worn impossibly soft by years of heavy use, sweat, and the natural oils of the wearer. The edges of the strap are slightly frayed, resembling a soft, dusty fringe, while the tightly braided core holds the deep, indented memory of the porter's brow, permanently curved and molded to the exact contours of the individual who wears it. The namlo smells faintly of dried grass, old canvas, and the sharp, clean scent of the high-altitude wind. These tools, resting together in the dim, quiet corner of the room, do not speak of hardship in this moment, rather they radiate a profound, dignified stillness. They are at rest, their heavy duties temporarily suspended by the gentle grace of the early dawn. And finally, upon a raised wooden platform built into the far wall, the inhabitants of this sanctuary remain deeply, peacefully asleep. They are cocooned beneath thick, immense piles of hand-loomed yak wool blankets, the fabric dyed in completely natural, undyed shades of creamy white, deep chocolate brown, and soft charcoal grey. The wool is incredibly dense and heavy, offering a comforting, deeply grounding weight that presses down upon the tired muscles, anchoring the sleepers to the earth and encouraging the deepest, most restorative stages of slumber. The scent of the lanolin, The natural waterproofing oil of the yak fleece hangs heavily in the air, a rich, slightly musky, and wonderfully cozy aroma that speaks of absolute protection against the harshest elements. Beneath these heavy woven mountains of wool, the slow, rhythmic, and incredibly steady sound of deep breathing rises and falls, harmonizing perfectly with the soft hiss of the juniper sap and the low, resonant hum of the heating water. The room is a perfect sealed sphere of warmth, shadow, and profound rest, a timeless capsule of peace suspended halfway between the dark earth and the waking mist-shrouded sky. As we step back out of the warm, amber interior of the porter's dwelling, the world outside has begun to shift, though it remains firmly held in the velvet grip of the early morning. The village is situated on a narrow, shelf-like plateau, a geological pause in the otherwise relentless verticality of the Himalayan range. To understand the life of the tea porter in 1840, one must first understand the immense, silent geography that surrounds them, a landscape that does not merely exist, but dominates every thought and movement. To the north, the horizon is jagged and white, where the great Himalaya range pierces the thinning atmosphere. At this pre-dawn hour, these peaks are not white, but a ghostly, ethereal blue, appearing more like frozen waves of light than solid rock. They are the Himavat, the abode of snow, and they exert a physical pull on the valley below, sending down rivers of cold, dense air that flow through the village like invisible water. This air is heavy with the scent of high-altitude minerals, a sharp, metallic tang that tastes of ancient granite and pulverized quartz, filtered through the absolute purity of the eternal ice. The terrain immediately surrounding the settlement is a complex tapestry of terraced slopes, a testament to the quiet, persistent industry of the mountain people. These terraces, carved out over centuries, follow the natural contours of the mountain, creating long, winding ribbons of level ground that step down into the abyss like a giant staircase. In the dim, pre-dawn light, the edges of these terraces are barely visible, defined only by the slightly darker shadow of the stone retaining walls. These walls are masterpieces of dry stone masonry, identical in construction to the porters' homes, but built on a massive landscape-altering scale. Every stone was carried by hand, every gap filled with smaller pebbles to allow for the drainage of the torrential monsoon rains that would otherwise wash the precious soil away. The soil itself is a dark, loamy treasure, rich with the decomposed needles of the towering deodar cedars and the fallen leaves of the wild rhododendrons. It is a soil that feels cool and spongy underfoot, holding onto the night's moisture with a stubborn tenacity. In the 1840s, these terraces are not just for survival, they are the cradle of the tea trade. As the mist begins to thin ever so slightly, the first rows of tea bushes reveal themselves. These are not the sprawling industrial plantations of the later Victorian era, but smaller, more intimate gardens integrated into the wild landscape. The bushes are low and dense, their leaves a deep waxy emerald that appears almost black in the low light. Each leaf is a tiny perfect oval tipped with a fine silver down the pecco, which traps the morning dew in shimmering, microscopic spheres. If you were to lean down and press your face near these bushes, you would encounter a scent that is entirely unique to this altitude, a combination of crushed green herbs, wet earth, and a subtle floral sweetness that hints at the jasmine and orchids that grow wild in the nearby ravines. The tea bushes seem to be holding their breath, waiting for the first touch of the sun to begin the slow chemical alchemy that produces the world's most sought-after beverage. Beyond the terraces, the cultivated land gives way to the primordial forest, a dense and mysterious realm of ancient trees and hidden water. Here the Himalayan blue pines stand tall and elegant, their long soft needles sighing in the morning breeze with a sound like distant surf. The pines are draped in long flowing tresses of lichen, the old man's beard, which hangs in pale ghostly streamers that sway with a slow hypnotic rhythm. These lichens act as natural filters, capturing the moisture from the passing clouds and letting it drip slowly, rhythmically onto the forest floor. The sound of this constant gentle dripping is the ambient music of the mountain forest, 1,000 tiny percussionists playing a song of perpetual growth and decay. Beneath the pines, the great rhododendrons grow, their gnarled, twisted trunks covered in thick, spongy moss that is several inches deep. In the spring, these trees will explode into a riot of crimson and pink, but now, in the quiet of 1840, They are silent guardians of the slopes, their dark, leathery leaves providing shelter for the small mountain birds that are just beginning to stir. Descending through the forest and bypassing the village is a glacial stream, the primary source of life for the porters and their families. At this hour, the water is a dark, churning ribbon of liquid silver, rushing over smooth grey boulders with a low, thunderous growl that vibrates through the very soles of your feet. This is not the gentle babbling of a meadow brook. It is the raw, unbridled energy of the high peaks, a force that has spent eons carving the very valley we stand in. The spray from the stream rises into the air as a fine, freezing mist, coating the nearby rocks and ferns in a layer of crystalline ice that glitters like scattered diamonds in the expanding light. The boulders in the stream are vast and ancient, polished to a glass-like finish by the relentless passage of water and silt. Some are the size of small houses wedged into the stream bed with a permanence that defies the imagination. The water that flows over them is so cold it feels like a physical shock, a pure distilled essence of the glaciers that sit thousands of feet above. Connecting the village, the terraces, and the forest is the path, the porter's true home. It is a narrow, winding thread of beaten earth and strategically placed stones that snakes its way along the precarious edges of the ridges. In 1840, this path is the only artery of commerce, the only link between the secluded mountain gardens and the bustling markets of the plains below. The path is not a flat surface, it is a living history of movement. In places where the incline is too steep, the path transforms into a series of uneven stone steps, each one worn into a shallow bowl by the millions of footsteps that have passed over it. The edges of the path are often lined with mani walls, long, low structures made of stones inscribed with sacred mantras. These stones are cold to the touch, their surfaces smoothed by the ritual stroking of passing travelers seeking protection from the mountain's unpredictable whims. As you walk this path in your mind, the silence is so profound that you can hear the sound of your own heartbeat, a steady, reassuring drumbeat that matches the rhythm of the mountain itself. Looking down from the edge of the village plateau, the valley floor is still a sea of white mist, a vast undulating ocean that hides the lower world from view. It feels as though the village is an island floating in the sky, disconnected from the mundane concerns of the 19th century world. There are no telegraph lines here, no steam engines, no clamour of industry. There is only the wind, the stone, and the slow, inevitable approach of the sun. The geography of the Himalayas in 1840 is one of absolute scale, where the individual is small, yet perfectly integrated into the grand design. Every rock, every tree, and every breath of wind has a purpose and a place. As we stand here watching the lavender light of dawn begin to define the jagged silhouette of the eastern ridges, we feel a sense of profound belonging. The mountain is not a hostile place, it is a silent, ancient teacher, offering its stillness to those who are willing to wake with the mist and find peace in the shadows of the giants. The quiet dawn is not just a time of day, it is a state of being, a moment where the earth and the sky hold a silent conversation, and we are privileged to simply stand and listen. As the light continues to soften, transitioning from a bruised plum to a delicate dusty rose, we turn our attention to the tactile world of the porter's clothing, the secondary skin that allows them to inhabit this high-altitude wilderness. In 1840, there are no synthetic fibers, no mass-produced garments. Every thread worn by these mountain travelers is a product of the land and a labor of immense time. The primary material is the wool of the Himalayan yak and the hardy mountain sheep, a fiber that is as much a part of the landscape as the granite beneath our feet. If you were to look closely at a porter's heavy tunic or chuba, you would see a texture that is wonderfully complex and rich. The wool is hand-spun on simple wooden spindles, resulting in a yarn that varies slightly in thickness, giving the fabric a rhythmic, organic character. It is not the thin, refined wool of the lowlands, but a dense, structural weave that feels substantial and protective, like a soft suit of armor. The color of these garments is a study in the natural palette of the Himalayas. Most are left in their original, undyed state, shades of creamy oatmeal, smoky charcoal, and a deep, resonant walnut brown. These earthy tones serve a dual purpose. They are aesthetically grounded in the environment, and they are practically suited for the dust and soot of a life lived on the trail. Some garments, however, bear the subtle mark of natural dyes gathered from the mountain forests. A deep muted crimson comes from the roots of the madder plant, while a soft sun-bleached yellow is derived from the crushed petals of wild marigolds. These colours do not scream, they whisper, blending into the morning shadows with a quiet dignity. The fabric is thick enough to break the biting alpine wind, yet breathable enough to allow the moisture of physical exertion to escape. A perfect balance achieved through centuries of trial and error. Inside the porter's dwelling, a pile of these garments lies near the hearth, warming in the rising heat of the juniper fire. As the wool warms, it releases a scent that is the very essence of mountain comfort, a rich, musky aroma of lanolin, wood smoke, and dried earth. This is the scent of safety. To a porter, the smell of warm wool is the smell of home, a sensory anchor that provides psychological warmth even when the external temperature drops well below freezing. The lanolin, the natural oil produced by the sheep and yaks, remains within the fibers, making the fabric naturally water-resistant. In the misty dawn, you can see tiny beads of moisture resting on the surface of the wool, unable to penetrate the dense weave, looking like microscopic pearls scattered across a field of grey. The construction of the chuba is a marvel of functional design. It is a long, voluminous robe that wraps twice around the body, secured at the waist by a thick woven sash of braided wool or hemp. This creates a large internal pocket at the chest, a portable sanctuary where a porter might carry a small wooden bowl for tea, a pouch of parched barley flour known as tsampa, or perhaps a sacred amulet wrapped in silk. The sash itself is often a work of art, featuring intricate, geometric patterns that tell the story of the weaver's lineage or the specific valley from which they hail. These patterns, diamonds, zigzags, and stylized mountains, are woven with a tight, rhythmic precision that provides essential support to the lower back, a crucial necessity for those who will spend their day carrying nearly their own weight in tea leaves. Footwear in 1840 is equally specialized. Resting by the door are the shambo heavy boots with soles made of thick, layered yak hide and uppers of colorful, felted wool. The leather of the soles is incredibly tough, having been cured with salt and smoke until it is nearly as hard as wood, yet it retains a slight flexibility that allows the porter to feel the contours of the path. The boots are stitched together with sturdy sinew, and the tops are tied with braided cords of multicolored wool, often ending in small playful tassels that dance with every step. Inside, the boots are lined with soft, unspun wool or dried mountain grasses, providing a layer of insulation that keeps the toes warm even when trekking through the high, snowy passes. These boots are not just footwear, they are the porter's foundation, the point of contact between the human spirit and the ancient stone. As the porters begin to stir from their heavy blankets, the act of dressing is a slow, ritualistic process. There is no haste in their movements. They pull on heavy leggings of felted wool, then the chuba, wrapping the fabric carefully to ensure there are no bunches or folds that might chafe against the skin during the long hours of walking. The sash is tightened with a practiced tug, a firm, grounding sensation that signals the transition from the world of dreams to the world of the mountain. Finally, they reach for their headgear, often a simple brimless cap of dark wool or a long scarf wrapped expertly into a turban. This protects the head from the intense radiation of the high-altitude sun and keeps the warmth of the body from escaping into the cool morning air. Every piece of clothing is a testament to the relationship between the porter and their environment. There is a profound honesty in these textiles. They do not pretend to be something they are not. They are rough, durable, and immensely warm. They are the result of countless hours of shearing, washing, carding, spinning, weaving, and sewing, a collective effort of a community bound together by the needs of the mountain. As the porters stand and stretch, their wool-clad silhouettes appearing in the doorway, they look like extensions of the landscape itself, creatures of stone and fibre, perfectly adapted to the thin air and the steep trails. The fabric moves with a low, muffled sound, a soft shush-shush of wool rubbing against wool, which adds another layer to the morning symphony of silence. It is a sound of preparation, of quiet readiness. As you imagine the texture of this wool against your own skin, think of it as a heavy, warm embrace. Feel the weight of the fabric pulling gently at your shoulders, the coarseness of the fibers against your palms, and the incredible radiating heat that it holds. In this world of 1840, To be clothed is to be cared for, to be insulated not just from the cold, but from the vast indifferent emptiness of the high peaks. The textile of the morning is a woven prayer for endurance, a soft woolen promise that the body will be protected as it embarks once more upon the ancient winding path of the tea trade. We watch as a porter pauses by the fire, the golden light catching the stray fibres of his sleeve, creating a soft, glowing halo around his arm. He runs a hand over the fabric, smoothing a crease with a gesture of unconscious affection. This garment has travelled hundreds of miles with him. It has been his blanket on cold nights under the stars and his shield against the driving rain. It holds the memory of his sweat, the dust of distant valleys, and the lingering scent of many hearths. In the quiet dawn, the clothing is not just an object, it is a companion, a silent witness to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of the majestic, unyielding Himalayas. The mist outside begins to swirl with renewed energy, drawn upward by the warming air, but inside the circle of the porter's wool, the world remains steady and warm. This is the secret of the high mountains, to find the softness within the hardness, the warmth within the ice, and the comfort within the struggle. As the dawn continues to unfold, we remain in this tactile dream, wrapped in the heavy, soothing weight of 1840, listening to the muffled movements of the waking village and the rhythmic beating heart of the mountain. As the pale light of 1840 continues to filter through the heavy Himalayan atmosphere, the village reveals itself as a masterclass in the architecture of necessity and silence. Every structure in this high-altitude enclave is built with a profound understanding of the mountain's temperament, a quiet dialogue between human hands and the primordial rock. The dwellings are clustered together not by chance but in a deliberate, protective formation, huddling against the slope to create communal courtyards that trap the sun's warmth and deflect the biting northern winds. These small, open spaces between the houses are paved with flat river stones, worn smooth by the passage of time until they shimmer like frozen pools of water in the morning light. If you were to look closely at the masonry, you would notice how the stones at the base of the walls are massive, great, unyielding blocks of granite that anchor the home into the very marrow of the mountain, while the stones higher up are smaller, more delicate, chosen for their ability to be lifted and placed with precision. The walls themselves are not perfectly vertical. They lean inward with a subtle, graceful taper, a design feature known as battering. This sloping geometry provides incredible stability against the frequent tremors of the earth, but it also creates a visual sensation of the buildings rising out of the ground like natural outcroppings. The mortar between the stones where it exists is a mixture of local clay and straw, which has dried to a dusty pale ochre. In the deep recesses of these joints, tiny alpine succulents and delicate ferns have found a foothold, their vibrant green fronds drinking in the morning mist. This integration of life and stone suggests that the village is not an intrusion upon the mountain, but a participant in its slow geological life. The texture of the walls is a sensory journey. One moment your hand might brush against a cold crystalline facet of quartz, and the next it might sink into the soft springy cushion of a patch of silver moss. Moving through the narrow arteries of the village, you encounter the communal structures that bind the porter society together. Near the centre of the plateau stands a small square shrine, its walls whitewashed with a paste made from crushed limestone and milk. The whiteness is startling against the grey and brown of the surrounding landscape, a beacon of purity in the dim dawn. The shrine is topped with a tiered roof of dark, weathered copper that has turned a mottled seafoam green from decades of oxidation. Hanging from the eaves are small bronze bells, their clappers tied to wooden paddles that catch the morning breeze. As the wind stirs, the bells release a soft, crystalline chime, a sound so thin and pure that it seems to vibrate within the air itself rather than travelling through it. This sound is the heartbeat of the village's spiritual life, a constant, gentle reminder of the sacredness of the journey. Beside the shrine, a massive prayer wheel stands in a wooden frame, its cylindrical body made of beaten brass and embossed with the flowing script of ancient mantras. The metal is cool and smooth, polished to a dull gold by the thousands of hands that have turned it in a clockwise rhythm. Inside the wheel are millions of written prayers, and as it spins, it is believed to release these intentions into the mountain air, sending blessings of peace and protection over the porters and the tea gardens. In the quiet of 1840, The only other sound is the low, rhythmic creak thrum of the wooden axle as a lone elder, rising before the others, gives the wheel a slow, meditative spin. This sound is incredibly grounding, a mechanical lullaby that speaks of continuity, of the turning of the cycles of the day, the seasons, and the long winding history of the tea trade. The porches of the houses are perhaps the most intimate architectural details. Each home has a slightly raised wooden platform made of thick planks of deodar cedar, where the family gathers during the brief hours of afternoon sun. In this early morning hour, however, the porches are silent, holding only the echoes of the previous day's labor. Leaning against the pillars are the long notched wooden poles that the porters use as walking sticks and as temporary supports for their heavy baskets when they need to rest on the trail. These poles are made of exceptionally hard rhododendron wood, stripped of its bark and polished by the sweat of many palms. They stand like skeletal guardians, their dark, gnarled forms casting long, spindly shadows across the stone paving. The wood is cool to the touch, feeling dense and heavy, a reliable extension of the porter's own body. Beneath the porches, small alcoves have been carved out to store firewood. The wood is stacked with obsessive neatness, the split faces of the logs showing the intricate rings of their growth, a silent record of the mountain's climate over the past century. The scent of this drying wood, a mixture of resinous pine, sweet cedar, and the faint citrusy tang of green rhododendron, wafts upward, mingling with the pervasive smell of the morning mist. Every element of this architecture is sensory. There is nothing that does not have a texture, a scent, or a sound. Even the way the light hits the uneven surfaces of the stone creates a visual rhythm that is both complex and deeply soothing. The village is a landscape of shadows, with the deep blacks of the doorways and windows contrasting against the soft, pearlescent greys of the stone walls. The windows of the dwellings are small, designed to minimize heat loss, but they are framed with heavy timbers that are often intricately carved. These carvings depict stylized clouds, leaping snow leopards, and the auspicious symbols of the eightfold path. The depth of the carving creates a play of light and shadow that changes with every minute the sun rises higher. If you were to peer through the open slats of a shutter, you would see the interior world we explored earlier, now slowly waking. But the window itself serves as a transition point, a threshold between the internal sanctuary and the external majesty of the peaks. The wood of the window frames is silvered by the sun, its fibers raised and weathered, feeling almost like the skin of an ancient, wise creature. As the mist begins to rise in great, slow-motion plumes, it reveals the intricate network of stone gutters that run alongside the paths. These channels are designed to catch the snowmelt and the heavy rains, guiding the water away from the foundations of the houses and toward the terraced tea gardens below. The stones lining these gutters are chosen for their flatness, and the water moves over them with a soft sliding sound, a liquid hiss that is a constant background element of the village's soundscape. In the early morning, the water is a dark, glassy ribbon, carrying the coldness of the glaciers down to the roots of the tea plants. You can almost feel the vitality of this water, a life-giving force that connects the highest peaks to the smallest green leaf. The architecture of the porter's village in 1840 is an architecture of endurance. It does not seek to dominate its surroundings, but to belong to them. It is built from the mountain, for the mountain, and its beauty lies in its absolute lack of pretense. It is a place of heavy stone and warm wood, of deep shadows and soft light, as we stand in the center of the quiet courtyard, watching the first rays of the sun catch the green copper roof of the shrine. We feel the immense weight of the history contained within these walls. This is a place where every stone has a story, where every timber has witnessed the departure and return of 1,000 journeys. The stillness is not an absence of life, but a presence of deep-rooted peace. The village is a temple of the ordinary, where the simple acts of building, dwelling, and resting are elevated to a form of art. As you breathe in the cold, mineral-rich air, let your mind rest on the solidity of the stone. Feel the permanence of the architecture, the way it anchors you to this specific moment in 1840. There is no urgency here, only the steady, rhythmic unfolding of the dawn. The world is solid, the world is safe, and the mountain is a silent companion in your rest. The mist continues its slow, ethereal dance, and the village waits, wrapped in its mantle of stone and silence, for the day to truly begin. As the morning light gains a subtle buttery strength, the sensory focus shifts to the morning meal, a ritual of nourishment that is as much about ritual and warmth as it is about physical sustenance. In the year 1840, the porter's diet is a masterclass in efficiency and tradition centered around the life-sustaining grain of the high Himalayas, barley. Inside the stone dwellings, the sound of the morning meal begins with the rhythmic stone-on-stone song of the hand mill or sampa grinder. This is a sound that has echoed through these mountains for millennia, a low grinding drone that vibrates through the floorboards as heavy basalt stones pulverize roasted barley into a fine nutty flour. The flour itself is a beautiful dusty sand color, feeling incredibly soft and silky between the thumb and forefinger, yet possessing a hearty toasted aroma that fills the room with the scent of a summer harvest. This barley flour, known as tsampa, is the cornerstone of the porter's existence. To prepare it, a porter reaches for his personal wooden bowl, often carved from the dense burl wood of a birch tree. These bowls are objects of great personal significance, smoothed and darkened by decades of use and the natural oils of the hands. They feel warm and substantial, with a grain that ripples like the very mountain ridges they inhabit. Into this bowl, a generous portion of the fragrant tsampa is measured. Then comes the alchemy of the tea. The water we heard humming earlier has now reached a gentle rolling simmer. The porter's wife, her movements slow and deliberate in the dim light, adds a portion of dark, compressed tea, a brick of leaves that has been fermented and aged until it is as hard as a piece of mahogany. She breaks off a fragment with a small iron pick, and as it hits the water, the liquid transforms into a deep, opaque mahogany, releasing a robust, tannic fragrance that is both bitter and strangely sweet. But the true secret to the tea's fortifying power lies in the addition of two crucial ingredients: salt and yak butter. This is not the delicate tea of a London drawing room. This is po cha, or butter tea, a thick, emulsified broth designed to protect the body against the dehydrating effects of high-altitude winds and the bitter cold of the 1,140 mountain passes. The salt is harvested from the high, saline lakes of the Tibetan plateau, appearing as large, jagged crystals that hold a faint pinkish hue. When dropped into the pot, it adds a sharp mineral edge to the brew. Then, a large dollop of fresh yak butter is added. This butter is a vibrant primrose yellow rich with the essence of the alpine wildflowers the yaks grazed upon during the brief summer months. It smells of sweet cream and clean earth, a scent that is deeply nourishing even before it touches the tongue. To combine these elements, the mixture is poured into a chandong, a long, cylindrical wooden churn bound with rings of beaten brass. The sound of the churn is a rhythmic splashing thud, thump slosh, as the plunger moves up and down, forcing the butter, salt, and tea into a seamless, frothy emulsion. This process aerates the tea, making it lighter on the palate while ensuring the fats are perfectly suspended. When the po cha is finally poured into the porter's wooden bowl, it is topped with a layer of pale, creamy foam that looks like the very mist clinging to the windows outside. The porter uses his fingers to knead the sampa flour and the butter tea together into small, dense balls of dough. This is a tactile experience of the highest order, the warmth of the tea softening the flour, the slickness of the butter coating the skin, and the solid grounding weight of the meal taking shape. As you imagine taking a sip of this ancient brew, feel the way the salt immediately awakens the senses, followed by the rich, velvety coating of the butter on your lips. It is a savory sensation, more like a thin, complex soup than what we might traditionally call tea. It travels down the throat like a liquid blanket, spreading a deep internal heat that radiates outward to the fingertips and toes. The flavor is a complex map of the landscape, the bitterness of the high-altitude leaves, the mineral salt of the hidden lakes, and the creamy richness of the mountain pastures. It is a taste that speaks of endurance and the quiet strength required to live among the clouds. The steam from the bowl rises in soft, swirling patterns, momentarily obscuring the porter's face and adding to the hypnotic, dreamlike atmosphere of the waking house. The breakfast is eaten in a comfortable, contemplative silence. In 1840, the morning meal is not a time for chatter or the planning of logistics, it is a time of internal preparation. The only sounds are the soft clink of the wooden bowls, the occasional crackle of the juniper fire, and the steady rhythmic breathing of the family. There is a profound sense of gratitude in this meal, a recognition that each calorie is a gift from the mountain. Beside the fire, a small portion of the tsampa and tea might be set aside as an offering, a gesture of respect to the local spirits of the hearth and the peaks. This small act of piety adds a layer of spiritual stillness to the culinary ritual, connecting the physical act of eating to the vast metaphysical world of the Himalayas. As the porter finishes his meal, he uses a small piece of dough to wipe every last trace of flour and butter from the inside of his bowl, ensuring nothing is wasted. The bowl is then tucked away into the folds of his chuba, still warm from the tea, resting against his chest like a small wooden heart. The lingering scent in the room is a masterpiece of olfactory layering. The nutty toasted barley, the salty tang of the tea, the sweet cream of the butter, and the ever-present resinous smoke of the juniper. It is a scent that clings to the wool of the clothing and the hair of the inhabitants, a portable aroma of home that will accompany them throughout the day. Outside the door, the village is beginning to hum with similar activity. In every stone hut, the same ritual is unfolding, creating a collective exhale of steam and smoke that rises into the awakening sky. The culinary traditions of 1840 are a shield against the vastness of the landscape. By consuming the products of the mountain, the barley that grew in the terraces, the tea that was carried up the trails, and the butter from the animals that walk the slopes, the porters are quite literally becoming one with the environment. They are fueled by the very earth they will spend the day traversing. This realization brings a sense of deep biological peace, a feeling of being perfectly aligned with the natural order. As we linger in this moment of post-meal tranquility, the world feels incredibly solid and nourished. The hunger of the night has been satisfied, and the body feels heavy, warm, and ready. The morning meal is the first bridge crossed in the transition from sleep to action, a gentle, flavorful awakening that honors the needs of the flesh while soothing the spirit. The mist continues to thin, revealing the vibrant green of the tea gardens below, and for a few more minutes we simply sit in the warmth of the hearth, tasting the salt and the butter, and listening to the mountain breathe. The day is coming, but for now the belly is full, the heart is quiet, and the world is a sanctuary of toasted barley and buttered tea. The transition from the sheltered amber warmth of the hearth to the expansive cool grey of the mountain trail is a movement made with the grace of long habit. As the porter steps out of his stone dwelling in the year 1840, he is not merely entering a landscape, he is reconnecting with an ancient, winding artery that defines his very existence. The path is his true home, a ribbon of trodden earth and carefully placed granite that clings to the precarious ribs of the Himalayas. At this hour, the path is still veiled in the final, lingering wisps of the morning mist, which swirl around his ankles like the hem of a ghostly garment. The stones beneath his felted boots are slick with the night's condensation, appearing dark and lustrous, like the skin of a deep-sea creature. Each step he takes is a deliberate negotiation with the mountain, a rhythmic placement of weight that requires both strength and a profound intuitive suppleness. Before the first full mile is covered, the porter reaches for his most faithful companion, the purbu or the wooden resting staff. This is not a common walking stick found in the lower valleys, but a specialized tool of the high-altitude trade, crafted from the densest, most resilient heartwood of the wild rhododendron. The staff is roughly the height of the porter's waist and topped with a distinctive T-shaped handle. The wood has been seasoned by decades of use, turning a deep burnished ebony that feels as smooth as silk and as hard as iron. If you were to run your palm over the handle, you would feel the subtle indentations where generations of thumbs have pressed into the grain, molding the wood to the shape of human endurance. This staff serves a dual purpose. It acts as a third leg on the treacherous vertical inclines, providing a point of stability on the loose scree and slick mud, and it serves as a crucial support during the frequent necessary pauses. The ritual of the rest is perhaps the most hypnotic element of the porter's day. When the weight of the bamboo doko, packed tight with nearly 80 pounds of compressed tea leaves, becomes a heavy, insistent pressure against the spine, the porter does not simply sit on the ground. To sit would be to risk the immense weight of the basket pinning him down, making it nearly impossible to rise again in the thinning air. Instead, he performs a graceful, practiced maneuver, finding a slightly level spot on the path. He swings his body around and slides the T-shaped handle of his staff beneath the base of the basket. With a slight shift of his hips, the weight is transferred from his shoulders and forehead to the sturdy rhododendron wood, which bites into the earth with a solid, reassuring thud. In this position, the porter remains standing, his body slightly inclined, his forehead still connected to the Namlo strap, yet his muscles are granted a moment of profound, weightless relief. The sound of this ritual is a fundamental part of the mountain's morning symphony. It is the rhythmic clack-thud of dozens of wooden staffs hitting the stone path in unison, followed by the collective deep exhale of the men as the burden is momentarily suspended. During these pauses, the silence of the 1840 wilderness rushes back in to fill the void. You can hear the distant, high-pitched whistle of a yellow-billed cha as it circles the crags, and the much closer, almost imperceptible sound of the wind vibrating through the tightly packed tea leaves in the baskets. The air here is so thin and pure that sound travels with a crystalline clarity. The snapping of a dry twig 100 yards away sounds like a sharp report of a pistol, yet it is immediately softened by the immense, absorbent presence of the surrounding forest. As the porters move deeper into the morning, the path leads them through a series of microclimates, each with its own unique sensory signature. One moment they are walking through a sun-drenched clearing where the earth is dry and smells of toasted pine and warm dust. The next, the path plunges into a deep north-facing ravine where the sun never reaches. Here, the temperature drops instantly by 10 degrees, and the air becomes heavy with the scent of ancient rotting vegetation and cold dripping water. The walls of the ravine are covered in a thick, vibrant tapestry of liverworts and kidney-shaped ferns, their fronds glistening with a permanent coating of moisture. The sound of dripping water is everywhere, 1,000 tiny liquid bells striking the dark pools beside the trail. This contrast between the warmth of the sun and the chill of the shadows creates a sensory rhythm that keeps the mind alert and the body in a state of constant subtle adjustment. The path itself is a marvel of primitive engineering. In places where the mountain falls away into a vertical abyss, the porters of 1840 have constructed sangos, narrow, cantilevered bridges made of flat stones and interlocking logs. Crossing these structures requires a meditative focus. The wood of the bridge groans softly under the immense weight of the porters, a low-frequency vibration that can be felt in the marrow of the bones. Below, the mountain torrent rages, a churning chaos of white water and grey silt that looks like liquid lead. The spray rises up in a fine, freezing mist, coating the porter's eyelashes and the wool of his tunic with microscopic jewels of ice. Yet there is no fear in this movement. There is only a deep, abiding trust in the materials of the mountain and the strength of the hands that placed them there. Along the edges of the trail, the porters encounter the chortens, small stone stupas built to house sacred relics or to mark a particularly dangerous pass. These structures are built in the same tapering geometric style as the village houses, but they are often covered in a layer of ancient flaking lime wash that makes them glow like beacons against the dark greenery of the forest. Hanging from the peaks of the chortens are long strings of cotton prayer flags, their colours blue, white, red, green and yellow, now faded by the intense Himalayan sun to soft pastel hues. The wind catches these flags, causing them to flap with a rapid rhythmic sound like the beating of 1,000 tiny wings. This sound, known as the horse of the wind, is believed to carry the prayers printed on the fabric to the farthest reaches of the universe. To the porter, it is a soothing, auditory reminder that he is never truly alone on these high, lonely paths. The texture of the path underfoot changes constantly. In the high meadows, it is a soft, springy cushion of turf and wildflowers. In the rocky defiles, it is a jarring, uneven mosaic of sharp-edged schist. The porters develop a unique gait, a slow, rolling step that minimizes the impact on the knees and makes use of the body's natural momentum. It is a walk that looks effortless, yet it is the product of a lifetime of conditioning. There is a profound sense of economy in their movements. Every gesture is measured. Every breath is deep and rhythmic. As you watch them move through the landscape of 1840, they appear less like men walking and more like a slow-moving river of wool and bamboo, flowing inevitably toward their destination. As the sun climbs higher, the shadows on the path begin to shorten, and the golden light starts to penetrate even the deepest ravines. the mountain begins to lose its bruised, blue quality and takes on the vibrant, saturated colors of the day. The deep greens of the pines, the brilliant whites of the distant peaks, and the rich red-brown of the earth all come into sharp focus. The world feels immense, yet strangely intimate. Every detail of the path, the way a particular stone is shaped, the specific curve of a rhododendron branch, the exact scent of the wind as it passes over a field of wild primrose is etched into the porter's consciousness. This is a life lived in the superlative of the senses, where the beauty of the world is not something to be observed from a distance, but something to be felt, smelled, and breathed in with every step. Let your mind rest on the steady, rhythmic clack-thud of the staff. Feel the coolness of the mountain air against your face and the comforting weight of the wool against your skin. The path is long, but there is no hurry. The mountain has been here for eons, and it will be here long after the tea has been delivered and the porters have returned to their firesides. In the quiet dawn of 1840, the journey is the destination, and the path is a sacred space of endurance, reflection, and profound, unshakable peace. We continue to move with the line of porters, drifting deeper into the heart of the Himalayas, where the only thing that matters is the next step, the next breath, and the steady, unfolding majesty of the waking world. As the sun of 1840 finally clears the jagged crystalline teeth of the eastern peaks, the light changes from a soft, diffused glow into a series of sharp golden lances that pierce through the thinning canopy of the mountain forest. This is the moment when the true protagonist of our journey, the tea plant itself, is revealed in all its quiet, verdant glory. We find ourselves standing at the edge of a high-altitude garden, where the slopes are so steep that the very act of planting feels like an act of defiance against gravity. The tea bushes of this era are not the uniform pruned hedges of modern industrial agriculture. They are hardy, semi-wild shrubs, each one possessing a unique character and a silhouette shaped by the capricious mountain winds. They grow in clusters and rows that follow the natural undulating ribs of the earth, creating a rhythmic pattern of deep emerald that contrasts beautifully against the rugged grey-blue background of the Himalayan granite. To look closely at a single tea leaf in the morning light is to witness a masterpiece of botanical engineering. Each leaf is a stiff, waxy oval, roughly the size of a thumb, with finely serrated edges that look like the delicate teeth of a silver comb. In the early morning, these leaves are heavily laden with a thick, crystalline dew that has gathered during the freezing night. The water does not simply sit upon the surface. It clings to the fine, microscopic hairs, the silver down known as trichomes, that cover the undersides of the youngest, most tender buds. These tiny hairs trap the moisture and the morning light, making the bushes appear as though they have been dusted with a layer of powdered diamonds. If you were to reach out and touch one of these leaves, it would feel surprisingly cool and firm, almost like a piece of polished jade, yet it would leave a faint, sticky residue of essential oils on your fingertips, a fragrant promise of the flavor locked within. The scent of a tea garden in 1840 is a complex, multi-layered perfume that evolves with every degree the sun rises. At this hour, the dominant aroma is one of intense greenness, a sharp, refreshing scent of crushed herbs and damp earth. But beneath this initial layer lies a more subtle floral sweetness, a hint of orchid and wild jasmine that grows in the damp shadows of the nearby ravines. As the sun warms the leaves, they begin to release their own volatile oils, adding a deep, resinous and slightly nutty undertone to the air. It is a fragrance that is both invigorating and deeply calming, a natural aromatherapy that fills the lungs and clears the mind. The air is so pure at this altitude that the scent carries for miles, a beckoning trail for the pollinators and a constant, comforting presence for the porters who work these slopes. Amidst the tea bushes, the mountain's wild flora continues its own silent, beautiful life. We see the great Himalayan lilies, their massive trumpet-shaped flowers a pale, ghostly white that seems to glow from within the shadows of the forest edge. These lilies release a heavy, intoxicating scent in the early morning, a thick honey-like perfume that anchors the lighter scents of the tea leaves. Beside them, the wild strawberries creep along the ground, their tiny tri-lobed leaves a vibrant lime green against the dark, loamy soil. The strawberries are just beginning to ripen, appearing as small, ruby-coloured jewels hidden beneath the foliage. The contrast of these colours, the deep emerald of the tea, the pure white of the lilies, and the brilliant red of the berries, creates a visual tapestry that is incredibly rich and deeply satisfying to the eye. The soil of these gardens is a character in its own right. It is not the tired, depleted dirt of the plains, but a vital living medium composed of decomposed granite, ancient volcanic ash, and the leaf litter of 1,000 autumns. It is a dark chocolate brown, almost black in places, and it holds the moisture of the clouds with a stubborn, nurturing embrace. If you were to scoop up a handful of this earth, it would feel crumbly and rich, smelling of deep-seated minerals and the slow, patient process of decay and rebirth. This is the foundation of the tea's character, the terroir that gives the brew its legendary strength and its lingering metallic finish. The roots of the tea bushes reach deep into this mineral-rich darkness, drawing up the essence of the mountain and concentrating it into the tiny green leaves that the porters will soon carry across the world. The soundscape of the garden is one of micro-movements and subtle vibrations. There is the occasional soft plop of a heavy dewdrop falling from a leaf onto the damp earth below. There is the dry, papery rustle of the tea leaves as a mountain lizard skitters through the undergrowth, its scales a shimmering, iridescent green that perfectly matches the foliage. And there is the constant, low-frequency hum of the bees, large, fuzzy mountain bees with golden stripes, as they move methodically from flower to flower, their wings creating a steady, hypnotic drone that acts as a background white noise to the morning's activities. This sound is incredibly soothing, a natural metronome that reinforces the feeling of a world in perfect, unhurried balance. As the morning progresses, the first of the tea pluckers begin to move through the rows. In 1840, these are often the women of the village. Their movements are study in practiced rhythmic efficiency. They do not use shears or tools. Instead, they use their bare hands, their fingers moving with the speed and precision of a weaver's shuttle. They search for the imperial pluck, the terminal bud, and the 2 youngest leaves. With a swift, gentle flick of the wrist, the leaves are snapped from the stem, releasing a sudden, intense burst of green fragrance into the air. The sound of the plucking is a soft, repetitive snap, 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 a delicate percussion that marks the harvest of the mountain's wealth. The pluckers carry small, hand-woven baskets on their backs, and as the leaves fall into the containers, they create a soft, rustling sound like the falling of dry rain. The leaves are light and airy, but as the baskets fill, they begin to emit a collective warmth, the heat of the leaf, as the natural fermentation process begins the very moment they are separated from the plant. This warmth carries a sweet, hay-like aroma that mingles with the scent of the women's woolen garments and the lingering smoke from the morning fires. There is a profound sense of connection here, the human hand touching the mountain plant, the labour of the body feeding into the cycle of the seasons. Looking out from the tea garden, the view is one of breathtaking vertical immensity. The rows of bushes seem to pour down the mountainside like a green waterfall, eventually disappearing into the white sea of mist that still fills the lower valleys. Above, the white peaks are now fully illuminated, their glaciers shining with a blinding silver light that makes the eyes water. The scale is so vast that it is easy to feel insignificant, yet the act of plucking a single leaf brings the world back into a human, intimate focus. Every leaf matters, every movement has a purpose. The tea garden is a place of intense, focused labour, yet it is also a place of profound, meditative stillness. We linger at the edge of a terrace, watching a single dewdrop tremble on the tip of a tea bud. It captures the entire landscape within its tiny, translucent sphere. The white peaks, the green bushes, and the pale blue sky, before finally falling and vanishing into the dark soil. This is the essence of 1840. A world where the smallest detail holds the majesty of the whole. The botanical tapestry of the Himalayas is not just a source of commerce, it is a living, breathing expression of the mountain's soul. As we breathe in the scent of the warming leaves and listen to the rhythmic snap of the harvest, we feel a deep, grounding sense of peace. The world is productive, the world is beautiful, and the dawn has finally fully arrived. The green heart of the mountain is beating, and we are privileged to witness its steady, unfolding rhythm. The path leading away from the higher gardens and toward the mountain passes is a physical manifestation of 1840's endurance. It is a narrow ribbon of history, barely 2 feet wide in most places, etched into the vertical face of the mountain like a scar on an ancient giant. To the left, the rock wall rises, a sheer, cold expanse of grey gneiss and sparkling schist, weeping tiny rivulets of glacial melt that nourish the thick blankets of emerald moss. To the right, the world simply falls away. A single step off the path would lead to a descent of thousands of feet into the roaring white thread of the river below. For the tea porter, gravity is not an abstract concept. It is a constant, physical weight that pulls at the shoulders and tests the integrity of every tendon. The path is composed of a rhythmic sequence of obstacles. The sharp, ankle-turning edges of loose scree, the slick, deceptive smoothness of wet roots, and the repetitive, jarring impact of uneven stone stairs. The tea itself, packed into the golden bamboo doko, has its own unique physical presence. It is not a loose collection of leaves, but a dense, compressed mass that has been steamed and pressed into bricks for easier transport. Each brick is a dark, earthy brown, smelling of damp hay, old wood, and a hint of smoky autumn. When 80 pounds of these bricks are stacked into the conical basket, they create a centre of gravity that sits high and slightly back, threatening to pull the porter off balance with every uneven step. To counteract this, the porter leans forward at a sharp angle, his torso almost parallel to the ground, so that the weight of the tea rests directly over his centre of mass. This posture, maintained for hours on end, turns the act of walking into a form of moving meditation. The mind must be entirely present in the feet, feeling the texture of the earth through the thin leather soles of the Shambo boots. The sound of the trail is a layered, hypnotic drone. There is the rhythmic crunch slide of boots on gravel, the rhythmic creak of the bamboo basket as it flexes under the load, and the steady, heavy breathing of the men, a deep, bellows-like sound that matches the pace of their hearts. Occasionally a porter will emit a low whistle, or a short melodic call, not to communicate a specific message, but to signal his position to those behind him in the mist. These sounds do not disrupt the silence, they are absorbed by it. The mountain air has a way of swallowing noise, leaving only the most immediate tactile sounds to reach the ear. You can hear the individual grains of sand grinding beneath a boot, or the soft, dry rustle of the namlo strap as it settles against the porter's forehead. As the sun continues to climb, the temperature on the trail begins to fluctuate wildly. In the direct sunlight, the heat is intense and radiant, reflecting off the pale rock faces and baking the dust into a fine white powder that clings to the porter's damp skin. The scent here is one of sun-warmed stone and the sharp, alkaline tang of dry earth, but then the path rounds a corner into the deep shadow of a cliff, and the temperature plummets instantly. The air becomes heavy with the smell of old ice and wet granite. This constant cycling between heat and cold creates a physical rhythm that the body must absorb. The wool of the tuba becomes a thermal regulator, trapping the body's heat in the shadows and breathing out the moisture of exertion in the sun. The texture of the wool against the skin changes from a soft, dry warmth to a heavy, damp weight, yet it never loses its fundamental comfort. We pause for a moment at a shortara, a traditional resting platform built around a pair of sacred trees, a paipal and a banyan. These platforms are masterpieces of communal architecture, constructed from flat, cool stones that provide a perfect surface for the porters to rest their baskets. The shade of the trees is a profound relief, a pool of liquid green light that feels 10 degrees cooler than the surrounding trail. The leaves of the paipal tree, shaped like perfect shimmering hearts, rustle with a sound like falling water, even in the slightest breeze. Here the porters set down their burdens, the wooden staffs thudding into the earth as the weight of the tea is transferred to the stone platform. The silence that follows is absolute. For a few minutes no one speaks. They simply exist in the coolness, their bodies steaming slightly in the shade, their eyes fixed on the distant shimmering horizon. The water at these resting stops is a gift from the heights. It is piped into stone troughs through hollowed-out logs of rhododendron wood, flowing with a constant musical splash. The water is so cold it makes the teeth ache, tasting of nothing but pure distilled mountain. As the porters drink, the water spills over their chins and onto their tunics, darkening the wool and leaving behind a scent of crystalline freshness. They splash the water over their faces and necks, washing away the salt and dust of the trail. The physical sensation of the cold water against the heated skin is an incredible jolt of vitality, a sensory reset that prepares them for the next leg of the journey. Looking out from the Shotara, the landscape of 1840 is a sea of verticality. One can see the path snaking away into the distance, a thin, precarious thread that seems to defy the very laws of nature. It disappears into a forest of silver fir, re-emerges on a high, wind-swept ridge, and eventually vanishes into the white glare of a high pass. The sheer scale of the journey is humbling. Every pound of tea carried over this path represents a triumph of human will over the indifference of the terrain. Yet there is no sense of struggle in the porters' faces. There is only a quiet, stoic acceptance of the world as it is, a world of heavy loads, long paths, and the incomparable beauty of the high places. The tea in the baskets, though silent, is a living presence. It represents the sweat of the pluckers, the heat of the drying fires, and the hope of the village. As it travels, it continues to age, the mountain air subtly altering its chemistry, refining its flavor for a consumer thousands of miles away who will never know the name of the man who carried it. This connection between the rugged mountain trail and the distant refined tea rooms of the world is one of the great ironies of the 19th century. But here, on the stone platform under the peepal tree, that distant world does not exist. There is only the cool stone, the rustling leaves, the cold water, and the steady, rhythmic heartbeat of the mountain. As the porters prepare to lift their loads once more, the ritual of the Namlo begins again. They settle the strap across their foreheads, finding the exact spot where the woven jute has become softest over the years. They lean forward, the muscles in their necks and legs corded like the very roots of the trees above them. With a collective low grunt of effort, the baskets rise from the stone. The staffs are retrieved, the boots find their grip on the gravel, and the line moves off once more. The rhythm of 1840 resumes, a slow, steady, and incredibly peaceful progression through a landscape of light and shadow. We follow in their wake, our minds attuned to the crunch of the path and the scent of the tea, drifting deeper into the heart of a history that moves at the speed of a human step. As the line of porters moves higher, leaving the terraced gardens behind, they enter the ancient primordial forest that blankets the mid-elevation ridges of the Himalayas. In 1840, this forest is an untouched cathedral of biological diversity, a place where the air changes density and the light takes on a filtered emerald quality. The transition is marked by the scent. The sharp floral notes of the tea gardens are replaced by the deep balsamic perfume of the Himalayan blue pine and the majestic deodar cedar. These trees, some of which have stood for 5 centuries, reach upward with a stubborn, silent ambition, their branches draped in long, swaying tresses of pale green lichen that capture the wandering mountain mists. The scent is thick and resinous, a mixture of sweet turpentine, damp earth, and the faint vanilla-like aroma of decaying wood. It is a fragrance that feels heavy in the lungs, grounding the spirit and slowing the pulse. The ground beneath the porter's feet changes from the hard-packed clay of the lower trails to a soft, springy carpet of fallen needles and thick, resilient moss. This natural cushioning mutes the sound of their footsteps, turning the rhythmic crunch of gravel into a soft, rhythmic thud. The forest floor is a world of miniature wonders. Tiny, translucent mushrooms with caps the color of pale honey push through the leaf litter, and silver-grey ferns unfurl their fronds in the damp shadows of the tree roots. The moss here is so thick it resembles a lush velvet blanket, varying in color from a brilliant, electric lime to a deep, somber olive. If you were to press your hand into this moss, it would feel cool and saturated, like a living sponge that has absorbed the very essence of the mountain's moisture. The soundscape of the high forest is a masterpiece of natural acoustics. The towering trees act as a baffle, dampening the sounds of the external world and amplifying the subtle movements within the canopy. High above, the wind moves through the pine needles with a sound like a distant rushing river, a constant shushing whisper that the locals call the voice of the peaks. This sound is punctuated by the occasional sharp crack of a falling branch or the resonant hollow thump of a pine cone hitting the forest floor. The birds of 1840 are active here. The Himalayan monal, with its plumage of iridescent purple and green, occasionally bursts from the undergrowth with a sudden, startling whir of wings, its cry a high-pitched, lonely whistle that echoes through the trunks. These sounds do not startle the porters, they are the familiar notes of a mountain symphony they have heard since childhood. As the porters navigate the winding trail through the trunks, they encounter the weeping rocks, shale outcroppings where the groundwater seeps through the horizontal layers of stone. These rocks are covered in a shimmering film of water that catches the stray beams of sunlight, making the grey stone appear as though it were plated in liquid silver. The water drips from the overhanging ledges with a rhythmic percussive cadence, striking the large, heart-shaped leaves of wild ginger plants below. The sound, a series of soft, liquid plips and plops, creates a natural metronome that the porters often subconsciously time their breathing to. The moisture in the air here is palpable, a cool, invisible mist that settles on the wool of their tubas, darkening the fabric and making the scent of the wet wool even more pronounced and comforting. In the deepest parts of the forest, the light never truly reaches the ground. It is a world of perpetual twilight where the shadows are deep and cool, smelling of ancient stone and cold water. Here, the porters pass by the ghost trees, ancient rhododendrons with gnarled, twisted trunks that look like frozen dancers. Their bark is a smooth, peeling cinnamon red, feeling as cool and sleek as polished bone. In 1840, these forests are believed to be the dwelling places of local deities and forest spirits, and the porters move through them with a quiet, respectful gravity. They might pause to place a small flat stone on a mounting cairn or tie a scrap of coloured cloth to a low-hanging branch, a silent hello to the invisible guardians of the trail. This spiritual awareness adds a layer of quietude to their movements, a sense that they are guests in a vast sentient kingdom. The trail occasionally opens up into small hidden glades, high-altitude meadows known as hearths. These clearings are filled with a riot of alpine wildflowers that thrive in the brief, intense summer sun. There are wild primroses in shades of delicate mauve, bright yellow buttercups that look like scattered coins, and the deep royal blue of the Himalayan gentian. The air in these glades is noticeably warmer and vibrates with the activity of high-altitude butterflies, large velvety insects with wings of charcoal and cream that flit lazily from bloom to bloom. The scent here shifts again, becoming light and honeyed, a fleeting sweetness that provides a momentary contrast to the heavy, resinous air of the deep forest. The porters do not stop in these glades. They move through them with a steady, rolling gait, their golden bamboo baskets glowing brilliantly in the unobstructed light. The texture of the trail itself in these high woods is a complex mosaic of roots. The ancient trees send their roots across the path in search of stability, creating a natural ladder of silver-grey wood. The porters have learnt to step precisely in the hollows between these roots, or to use the thickest ones as steps. The wood of the roots is worn smooth and dark by the passage of millions of feet, polished until it shines like dark marble. Stepping on these roots requires a keen sense of balance, especially when carrying a heavy load. The porters' toes, encased in their felt and leather boots, must grip the wood with an almost prehensile intelligence. You can feel the vibration of the mountain through these roots, the subtle, low-frequency hum of the earth that seems to travel up through the legs and settle in the base of the spine. As the sun moves higher, the angle of the light shifts, creating God rays, thick, visible beams of golden luminescence that cut through the wood smoke like haze of the forest. These beams illuminate the millions of tiny dust motes and spores dancing in the air, turning the forest into a shimmering, three-dimensional dreamscape. When a porter walks through one of these beams, his entire silhouette is briefly outlined in gold, the stray fibers of his woolen tunic glowing like a halo. It is a moment of transcendent beauty in a life of hard labor, a reminder that the mountain provides aesthetic rewards for those who endure its physical demands. The sight is so peaceful, so utterly removed from the frantic pace of the modern world, that it feels as though time itself has stopped to watch the slow progression of the tea. The forest of 1840 is a place of absolute continuity. There is no sense of urgency here, only the slow, inevitable growth of the trees and the steady, rhythmic passage of the seasons. The porters are a part of this cycle, their movements as predictable as the migration of the birds or the blooming of the lilies. As we follow them through the whispering pines, we are enveloped in a sense of profound safety. The trees are our walls, the canopy is our roof, and the soft moss is our floor. The world is enclosed, fragrant and deeply achingly quiet. The weight of the tea, the curve of the path, and the scent of the resin all blend into a single hypnotic experience of the high Himalayas. We linger for a moment in the shadow of a massive cedar, listening to the wind sighing through the branches far above. The sound is like a deep collective breath of the earth, a sigh of contentment that echoes our own. The porters have disappeared around a bend in the trail, their presence marked only by the lingering scent of wood smoke and the faint disappearing thud of their boots on the moss. We stand in the green silence, feeling the coolness of the forest settle into our bones, and we realize that this is the heart of the journey. In the quiet of the high forest, the distance between the human soul and the natural world dissolves, leaving only the peace of the 1840 morning and the steady unfolding mystery of the mountain. As the ascent continues into the year 1840, the porters enter the ethereal realm of the cloud forest. This is a unique altitudinal band where the rising heat of the lower valleys meets the chilling air of the high peaks, creating a permanent state of atmospheric suspension. Here, the moisture does not fall as rain, it simply exists as a tangible swirling presence. The mist is no longer a distant observer, but an intimate companion, weaving through the porter's line like a silken ribbon. It clings to the rough texture of their woolen tubas, transforming the dry fibers into a heavy damp armor that smells deeply of wet earth and ancient sheep. The visibility fluctuates with the whims of the wind, sometimes revealing a panoramic view of the jagged ridges and other times closing in until the world consists only of the porter immediately ahead and the 6 feet of trail underfoot. The vegetation in this misty kingdom is unlike anything seen in the lower glades because the sun is so often obscured. The plants have adapted to drink directly from the air. Every branch of the stunted, wind-swept oaks is encrusted with a thick, vibrant layer of epiphytic growth. There are orchids with translucent, ghost-white petals that seem to shiver in the damp draught, and long, pendulous streamers of Spanish moss that hang like the tattered banners of a forgotten mountain army. The moss here is not merely a ground cover, it is a vertical landscape. It grows in bulbous, emerald cushions on the trunks, housing entire civilizations of tiny mountain-dwelling insects. If you were to lean in close, you would hear the microscopic tink-tink of moisture condensing on the mossy tips and falling into the soft, sodden depths below, a sound of liquid growth that is the very heartbeat of the cloud forest. The trail itself becomes a masterpiece of organic texture. Over centuries, the constant dampness has softened the edges of the granite steps, rounding them into smooth, bone-like shapes. The soil is a rich, spongy peat, so thick with decomposed organic matter that it feels like walking on a heavy, waterlogged mattress. Each footfall of the porter's leather boot is met with a soft, squelching sigh, a rhythmic, muddy percussion that emphasizes the physical intimacy between the man and the mountain. There is no dust here, only the deep, cool scent of primordial decay and the sharp, medicinal tang of crushed wild herbs. The air tastes thick and sweet, filtered through 1,000 layers of living green, providing a natural oxygenation that fuels the porters as they push through the thinning atmosphere. In 1840, the cloud forest is a place of profound sensory isolation. The mist acts as a natural sound dampener, swallowing the distant roar of the river and the whistle of the wind, leaving only the most immediate sounds. You can hear the rhythmic creak-creak of the bamboo docos as they flex against the porter's spines, a sound that mimics the straining of a wooden ship's hull in a gentle sea. You can hear the soft, wet slap of a rhododendron leaf against a woolen sleeve, and the steady, rhythmic intake of breath through nostrils cooled by the vapor. This auditory cocoon creates a state of deep, internal reflection. The porters do not talk. They exist in a shared meditative silence, their minds drifting like the mist as their bodies perform the grueling alchemy of the climb. Occasionally, the forest reveals a portal, a place where a massive centuries-old cedar has fallen, creating a sudden clearing in the canopy. In these spaces, the mist swirls in violent, beautiful eddies, illuminated from above by a pale, pearlescent light. These clearings are often home to giant Himalayan lilies, their stalks reaching 6 feet high, topped with massive trumpet-shaped blooms that exhale a heavy, spicy perfume. The scent is so potent it cuts through the dampness, a sudden, intoxicating reminder of the world's hidden beauty. The porters pass through these pockets of fragrance without slowing, their silhouettes appearing and disappearing in the shifting vapor like figures in a dream. The contrast between the dark, dripping forest and these luminous, fragrant clearings creates a visual and olfactory rhythm that prevents the mind from succumbing to the fatigue of the journey. The water in the cloud forest is everywhere and nowhere. It doesn't flow in streams so much as it permeates everything. It drips from the tips of the porters' noses, it beads on the surface of the compressed tea bricks, and it creates tiny, shimmering reservoirs in the hollows of the path. This moisture is the lifeblood of the tea trade. It keeps the leaves from becoming brittle and ensures the porters remain hydrated through their skin, as much as through their wooden bowls. The texture of this world is one of soft, yielding dampness. Everything you touch, the bark of a tree, the stone of a wall, the strap of a basket, is cool, wet, and vibrantly alive. It is a world without harshness, where every edge is softened by a veil of moss or a shroud of mist. As the morning progresses toward midday, the light within the cloud forest takes on a strange, subterranean quality. It is a soft, underwater green, as though the entire mountain were submerged in a sea of translucent jade. This light does not cast shadows. It emanates from the plants themselves, reflected off the billions of microscopic water droplets suspended in the air. This shadowless world is incredibly soothing to the eyes, reducing the strain of the high-altitude glare and allowing the porters to maintain their focus on the treacherous footing. It feels as though time has slowed down, the seconds stretching out into long, languid pulses of green and grey. The urgency of the world below, the markets, the ships, the empires, feels like a faint, irrelevant echo in this kingdom of moisture and silence. Let your mind settle into this damp, emerald embrace. Feel the coolness of the mist against your brow, the heavy, rhythmic weight of the wool against your shoulders, and the soft, forgiving spring of the peat beneath your feet. There is no past and no future here, only the steady, unfolding present of 1840. The mountain is breathing, and you are breathing with it, a tiny part of a vast, humid lung. The scent of the tea, the moss, and the wet stone blends into a single hypnotic essence that lulls the senses into a state of profound, unshakable peace. We continue to drift through the vale, following the golden bamboo baskets as they float through the green twilight, moving ever upward toward the world of light and ice that waits above the clouds. The cloud forest is a sanctuary for the weary mind. It is a place where the senses are overwhelmed not by noise, but by a surplus of stillness. Every detail, the way a single drop of water hangs from a silver lichen thread, the way the mist curls around a porter's calf, the way the scent of wood smoke lingers in the damp air, is a focal point for meditation. In this world of 1840, we are reminded that the journey is not just about moving through space, but about becoming part of the landscape itself. As we move deeper into the mossy vale, the boundaries of the self begin to blur, leaving only the rhythm of the path and the steady, peaceful heartbeat of the Himalayan dawn. In the high-altitude world of 1840, social interaction among the tea porters is not defined by the boisterous clamour of the lowlands, but by a sophisticated and deeply felt language of silence. As the line of travellers reaches the upper limits of the cloud forest, where the air begins to sharpen with the proximity of the glaciers, the nature of their companionship reveals itself through subtle gestures and shared rhythms. There is a profound, unwritten code of the trail that governs every movement. When the lead porter slows his pace to navigate a particularly treacherous patch of black ice or loose shale, the information travels back through the line not as a shouted warning, but as a rhythmic shift in the sound of boots on stone. The men behind him adjust their stride instantaneously, a collective intelligence that ensures the safety of the entire group. This silent synchronicity is the result of years of walking the same narrow paths, a bond forged in the shared weight of the tea and the shared breath of the mountain. The communication that does occur is often nonverbal and deeply sensory. A porter might catch the eye of a younger companion struggling with the altitude and offer a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture of recognition that carries more weight than any speech. Or, during a brief pause at a high ridge, a man might reach into the chest pocket of his tuba and pull out a small piece of dried yak cheese, breaking it in half and handing a portion to the person beside him. The cheese is hard and translucent, like a piece of amber, and it must be held in the mouth for a long time to soften. The act of sharing this small concentrated burst of protein and salt is a sacred ritual of the trail, a physical manifestation of the mutual support required for survival. The scent of the aged cheese, sharp and musky, mingles with the ever-present aroma of wood smoke and damp wool, creating a shared olfactory space that binds the men together in the vast, indifferent landscape. In this era, the social hierarchy of the porters is based entirely on endurance and knowledge of the terrain. The pathfinder, usually the eldest among them, carries a burden equal to the others but possesses an internal map of the mountain that is as detailed as a master's blueprint. He knows which overhangs provide the best shelter from a sudden snow squall, which springs offer the purest water, and which stones are likely to shift under the weight of a heavy load. The others follow him with a quiet, unwavering trust. His movements are a study in economy. He does not waste a single calorie on unnecessary gestures. When he pauses, the entire line pauses. When he breathes deeply, they breathe deeply. This shared rhythm creates a sense of collective identity. They are not just individuals carrying tea, but a single multi-legged organism flowing over the ridges of 1840. The resting places or shotaras are the true social hubs of the mountain. Here, as the baskets are rested on the cool stone platforms, the silence finally softens into a low melodic hum of conversation. The language spoken is a dialect of the high valleys, a tongue that sounds like the mountain itself, filled with deep resonant vowels and sharp percussive consonants that echo the sounds of the wind and the falling rock. They do not talk of the distant world or the politics of empires. They speak of the immediate and the eternal. They discuss the condition of the upper passes, the health of the yaks in the summer pastures, and the subtle changes in the flavor of the tea harvest. Their voices are low and calm, never rising above the sound of the rustling pipal leaves. It is a conversation of essential things, stripped of all artifice and vanity. Within these groups there is also a profound respect for the tools of the trade. You might see a porter meticulously inspecting the namlo of a companion, checking the weave of the jute for any sign of fraying. This is not just a practical concern, it is an act of care. To ensure the integrity of a friend's equipment is to ensure his life. They might share a small whetstone to sharpen the iron picks they use for the tea bricks, the rhythmic scritch-scratch of metal on stone providing a soothing domestic soundtrack to the high-altitude rest. These small, repetitive actions are a way of asserting human order over the chaotic grandeur of the Himalayas. They are reminders that even in the face of the infinite, the details of craftsmanship and communal care remain paramount. As the sun reaches its zenith, casting short, intense shadows beneath the porter's feet, a new sensory element enters the social tapestry, the communal preparation of the midday sampa. One man might start a small controlled fire using dried juniper twigs and a bit of flint and steel. The sound of the flint striking the steel, a sharp metallic clink followed by the hiss of a spark catching the tinder, is a signal of transition. As the small flame grows, licking at the resinous wood and releasing a plume of sweet white smoke, the men gather in a circle. They use a single blackened pot to heat water for their tea, passing it around with a practiced fluid grace. There is no jostling or hurry. Each man waits his turn with a patience that has been bred into his bones by the slow pace of the trail. The act of eating together in the high wilderness is a profound equalizer. Whether a man is a seasoned veteran or a youth on his first journey, the sampa tastes the same. The butter tea is equally warming, and the mountain air is equally thin. In the year 1840, this communal meal is a fortress against the loneliness of the heights. As they sit on the sun-warmed stones, their backs leaning against the ancient trunks of the deodar cedars, the porters are shielded from the vastness by the proximity of their fellows. The warmth of the fire, the shared scent of the food, and the low murmur of their voices create a temporary home in the middle of the wilderness. It is a moment of deep, unshakable peace, a realization that as long as there is tea, fire, and companionship, the mountain can be traversed. Looking at the faces of these men, one sees the history of the Himalayas written in the deep lines around their eyes and the weathered texture of their skin. Their expressions are not those of people in a struggle, but of people who have found a rhythm that works in harmony with the world around them. There is a quiet dignity in their posture, a strength that comes from knowing exactly who they are and what they are capable of. They are the essential link in a global chain, yet they remain entirely rooted in the local and the immediate. As the meal ends and the fire is carefully extinguished with a handful of damp earth, the transition back to silence begins. One by one, the porters rise, their movements slow and deliberate. They help each other settle the heavy baskets back onto their shoulders, a final tactile check of the straps and the balance. The staffs are retrieved from the earth. The pathfinder takes his position at the head of the line, his eyes fixed on the distant shimmering pass. The social world of the Shotara dissolves back into the meditative world of the trail. The only sound is the rhythmic clack-thud of the staffs and the collective exhale as the journey resumes. We follow them once more, our minds attuned to this beautiful, understated social choreography, drifting deeper into the heart of 1840, where the strongest bonds are formed in the longest silences and the heaviest loads are made lighter by the simple presence of a friend. The mountain waits, and the line of tea moves on, a slow golden thread in the tapestry of the high dawn. As the sun of 1840 hangs suspended at its highest point, the porters reach a threshold where the physical labor of the climb begins to transcend into a deeper philosophical stillness. At this altitude, where the trees have stunted into gnarled skeletons and the air is as thin as a silk veil, the concepts of time and legacy take on a different texture. For the tea porter, time is not measured by the ticking of a mechanical clock, a device as foreign to these ridges as the steam engine, but by the rhythmic accumulation of footsteps and the slow, shifting shadows of the peaks. Each hour is a weight carried, each mile is a breath taken in the service of a journey that spans generations. As we watch the line of men moving against the backdrop of the eternal ice, we are struck by the profound, quiet dignity of a life lived in harmony with the slow, geological pace of the mountain. The weight of the tea on their backs becomes a metaphor for the weight of history itself. The leaves they carry are not merely a commodity, they are the distilled essence of the earth, the rain and the sun, captured in the emerald gardens of the lower valleys and carried toward a future they will never personally see. There is a beautiful, selfless patience in this work. In 1840, the porter understands that he is a vital link in a chain of continuity. He carries the traditions of his father and the hopes of his children, moving through a landscape that does not change, yet is never the same twice. This realization brings a sense of deep, existential peace. When one's purpose is as clear as the path ahead and as solid as the stone underfoot, the anxieties of the self begin to dissolve into the vastness of the horizon. Looking at the ancient weathered stones of the trail, one can feel the presence of the millions who have passed this way before. The path is a physical record of human persistence, a legacy carved into the mountain by the sheer force of will. Every depression in the rock, every smoothed edge of a granite step, is a testament to the fact that no effort is ever truly lost. In the silence of the high pass, the distinction between the past and the present begins to blur. We are walking with the ghosts of 1840, and they are walking with us, their rhythmic breathing echoing in the thin air. This connection to the ancestors provides a profound sense of security. The porter is never truly alone, for he is supported by the cumulative strength of all those who have mastered these heights before him. The beauty of the past in this context lies in its absolute honesty. In the 19th century Himalayas, there is no room for the superficial or the fleeting. Every object, the wooden bowl, the hand-woven strap, the iron-shod staff, has been refined by the hard reality of the environment, until only its essential form remains. There is a deep aesthetic satisfaction in this functional purity. The texture of the old wood, the scent of the vegetable-dyed wool, and the sound of the wind through the crags are not distractions. They are the very fabric of a meaningful existence. As the porters pause to look out over the sea of clouds, they are not just seeing a landscape, they are witnessing the unfolding of a sacred geometry, a world where every element is exactly where it ought to be. This philosophical stillness is also reflected in the way the porters perceive the mountain itself. They do not seek to conquer the peaks, a concept that would seem absurd to a mind rooted in the year 1840. Instead, they seek to coexist with the mountain, to find the subtle openings it provides and to respect the boundaries it sets. There is a profound humility in this relationship. The mountain is the teacher, and the porter is the student, learning the lessons of patience, endurance, and the beauty of the small. To carry 80 pounds of tea over a 12,000-foot pass is not an act of bravado, but an act of devotion, a quiet, daily prayer performed with the body and the breath. As we drift with the porters into the afternoon light, we are invited to reflect on our own relationship with time. In the frantic rush of the modern world, we often lose sight of the beauty found in the slow, the deliberate, and the difficult. The tea porters of 1840 remind us that the most significant journeys are those taken one step at a time, with a heart that is open to the silence and a mind that is focused on the present. The legacy of the past is not a burden to be discarded, but a foundation to be honored. The weight we carry, whatever it may be, can become a source of strength if we learn to move with it rather than against it. The mountain dawn has long since passed, and the day has ripened into a full golden maturity. The light reflects off the glaciers with a brilliance that seems to transcend the physical, suggesting a world of pure spirit that exists just beyond the reach of the senses. In this high-altitude sanctuary, the noise of the world is replaced by the music of the spheres, the low hum of the wind, the occasional crack of the ice, and the steady, reassuring heartbeat of the line. It is a moment of absolute clarity, a realization that we are part of something vast, ancient, and incredibly beautiful. Let your mind rest on this thought of continuity. Feel the solidity of the mountain beneath you and the lightness of the air around you. You are a traveler in time, exploring the quiet corridors of 1840, gathering the wisdom of the heights. There is no need to hurry, no need to reach the end. The peace of the mountain is not at the summit, it is in every step along the way. The scent of the tea lingers in the air, a fragrant reminder of the earth's generosity, and the rhythm of the staffs provides a steady hypnotic pulse that lulls the spirit into a state of profound meditative rest. As the sun begins its slow, inevitable descent toward the western ridges, the shadows on the trail grow long and soft, stretching out like the memories of a long life. The world is transitioning once more, preparing for the cool embrace of the evening, but for now, we remain suspended in this golden afternoon. We are the witnesses to a history that is written in stone and wool, a story of endurance and grace that continues to unfold in the silence of the Himalayas. The weight is balanced, the path is clear, and the soul is at peace. In the quiet of 1840, we find the stillness we have been seeking, a timeless sanctuary where the heart can finally come to rest. The afternoon sun begins to cast long, elegant fingers across the high Himalayan ridges, signaling the commencement of the final stage of the day's journey, the long rhythmic descent. In the year 1840, the journey downward is not merely a reversal of the climb, but a distinct sensory experience with its own unique demands and rewards. As the porters turn their backs to the high passes and begin to wind their way back toward the lower terraces, the mechanics of their movement change. Gravity, which was once a heavy antagonist, now becomes a subtle partner, requiring a different kind of strength, not the explosive power of the ascent, but a supple, shock-absorbing control that tests the resilience of the knees and the steadiness of the core. The light of the late afternoon is a masterpiece of atmospheric coloring. The harsh, white glare of midday has softened into a warm, honeyed amber that bathes the mountain in a luminous golden glow. This light has a way of picking out every texture of the landscape. The jagged edges of the granite cliffs are softened by long violet shadows, and the vast fields of alpine scree shimmer like a sea of crushed velvet. The tea in the bamboo baskets catches this light, the golden fibers of the weave glowing with an internal fire, making the porters look like they are carrying vessels of liquid sun. The air remains crisp and cool, but it has lost its biting edge, carrying the mellow, earthy scent of sun-baked stone and the sweet, resinous aroma of the warming pines below. The soundscape of the descent is marked by a new rhythm. The heavy, laboured breathing of the climb has given way to a more relaxed, steady cadence. The clack thud of the wooden staffs is now more frequent, used as brakes to steady each downward step. There is a melodic quality to this sound, a rhythmic percussion that echoes through the ravines as the line moves with the fluid grace of a mountain stream. Occasionally a porter will break into a low, humming song, a traditional folk melody of the high valleys that mimics the rise and fall of the terrain. The song is not sung for an audience, but for the mountain itself, a way of expressing the quiet joy of a day's work nearing its completion. The notes are long and mournful, yet they hold a hidden spark of contentment that resonates with the softening light. As they descend, the porters pass back through the various ecological zones they traversed in the morning. Re-entering the cloud forest, they find it transformed by the evening light. The mist, which was a ghostly grey at dawn, is now infused with the colours of the sunset, pale pinks, soft lavenders, and deep bruised oranges. The weeping rocks now shimmer with a golden film of water, and the mossy trunks of the oaks appear even more vibrant in the diffused afternoon glow. The scent of the forest has also shifted. The medicinal tang of the morning has been replaced by a deeper, sweeter aroma of damp earth and late-blooming lilies. It is a world that feels increasingly intimate and enclosed, a sanctuary that is preparing to fold itself back into the darkness of the night. The texture of the trail underfoot becomes more forgiving as they lose altitude. The sharp edges of the high-altitude rocks give way to the softer, loamy paths of the lower forests. The porter's felted boots sink slightly into the springy cushion of fallen needles, a tactile relief that seems to radiate upward through the legs. Each step is a release of tension, a gradual shedding of the day's burdens. The weight of the tea, while still substantial, feels more integrated into their bodies, a familiar presence that has become a part of their own physical rhythm. There is a profound sense of coming home in this movement, a gravitational pull toward the warmth of the hearths that are now beginning to send up their first plumes of evening smoke in the village below. As the village finally comes into view, nestled on its narrow shelf of stone, it looks like a cluster of fallen stars against the darkening slope. The first lanterns are being lit, their soft yellow light flickering in the windows of the stone dwellings. The sight of the village provides a final surge of energy to the porters. They adjust their namlo straps one last time, settle the baskets against their spines, and quicken their pace ever so slightly. The social silence of the trail begins to soften into the first murmurs of anticipation. They speak of the warmth of the tea that awaits them, the smell of the evening fire, and the comfort of the heavy wool blankets. Their voices are low and melodic, blending with the sound of the wind through the deodar trees. The transition from the wildness of the mountain to the order of the settlement is a gentle one. The path widens as it nears the first houses, and the sounds of village life begin to drift upward. The distant bark of a dog, the rhythmic thump-thump of someone preparing grain, and the soft laughter of children. These sounds are incredibly grounding, a sensory bridge back to the world of human companionship and domestic peace. The air here is warmer and thicker, smelling of wood smoke, roasted barley, and the damp, sweet earth of the tea gardens. It is a fragrance that signals the end of the labour and the beginning of the rest. We follow the line of porters as they enter the village courtyard, the stones beneath their boots now familiar and welcoming. The ritual of the arrival is as practiced and graceful as the ritual of the departure. They move to the communal storage sheds, where the tea will be safely housed for the night. With a collective, rhythmic movement, they lower the heavy bamboo baskets from their shoulders, the wooden staffs providing a final moment of support before the weight is finally released. The sound of 80 pounds of tea hitting the wooden floor is a solid, satisfying thud. The sound of a job well done, of a journey completed. As they stand and stretch their aching limbs, the porters look toward the eastern peaks, which are now silhouetted against a sky of deep indigo and pale violet. The first stars are beginning to appear, crystalline points of light that reflect the absolute purity of the mountain air. There is no exhaustion in their faces, only a profound, quiet satisfaction. They have moved through the light and the shadow, the heat and the cold, and they have returned to the center of their world. The day is over, and the mountain is at peace. We linger in the courtyard for a moment, breathing in the scent of the evening. The transition is complete. The world of 1840 has turned from the expansive majesty of the heights to the intimate amber warmth of the village. The night is coming, and with it the deep, restorative slumber that only the mountain can provide. The quiet dawn we witnessed so many hours ago has become a quiet dusk, and the cycle of the tea porter's life continues its steady, rhythmic, and incredibly peaceful progression. Let your mind rest on the image of the resting baskets and the flickering lanterns. The journey is done, the weight is gone, and the world is safe. As the last traces of the golden hour dissolve into a deep, crystalline twilight, the village of the tea porters transitions into its final, most introspective state of the day. In 1840, the night is not something to be pushed back with artificial glare. It is a welcomed presence, a velvet curtain that draws the community closer to the warmth of their hearths and the sanctuary of their thoughts. The architecture of the village, which seemed so solid and immovable in the daylight, now becomes a series of silhouettes against the deepening indigo of the sky. The stone walls lose their rugged texture and become smooth, dark masses, punctuated by the amber squares of window light where the juniper fires are being revived for the evening. The scent of the village changes again, becoming a rich, heavy tapestry of wood smoke, simmering lentils, and the sharp, clean fragrance of the night air as it begins to freeze once more. Inside the dwellings, the evening is a time for the quiet maintenance of the tools that make the mountain life possible. One of the porters sits near the fire, his hands moving with the unconscious grace of a master weaver as he repairs a frayed section of enamelo. The jute fibers are rough and dry, but as he works them between his fingers, they become a pliable, rhythmic extension of his will. The sound of the repair is a soft, repetitive snick-pull, a domestic percussion that joins the crackle of the embers. He is not just fixing a strap, he is weaving the safety of tomorrow's journey. This act of mending is a philosophical statement of 1840, a belief that things are meant to last, that care is the most essential form of labor, and that the continuity of the path depends on the integrity of the smallest thread. As he works, the porter might gaze up through the small opening in the roof, where the first of the great Himalayan stars have begun to appear. At this altitude, the stars do not twinkle. They burn with a steady, unwavering light, appearing so close and so numerous that it feels as though the sky is a vast, inverted bowl of diamonds. These stars are the same ones that guided his ancestors across the high passes and the same ones that will watch over his children. There is an immense, crushing beauty in this celestial canopy, yet it brings not a sense of insignificance, but one of belonging. The patterns of the stars, the Great Bear, the Hunter, the Celestial River, mirror the patterns of the tea gardens and the winding paths of the mountain. Everything is connected in a grand, silent geometry of light and stone. The texture of the evening inside the home is one of deep, insulated softness. The heavy yak wool blankets, which were tossed aside in the hurry of the morning, are now carefully unfolded and smoothed over the sleeping platforms. They feel dense and comforting, holding the lingering warmth of the day and the faint, musky scent of the high pastures. The earth-plastered walls seem to breathe in the firelight, glowing with a soft, peach-coloured radiance that pushes the shadows back into the corners. There is no urgency in the room, no demand for attention. The world has shrunk to the size of the hearth, a small luminous circle of safety in the middle of a vast frozen wilderness. The silence of the night is absolute, broken only by the rhythmic heavy breathing of the family and the occasional distant groan of the shifting glaciers high above. The evening meal is a simpler affair than the morning's preparation, often consisting of a thick, warming soup of black lentils and wild mountain herbs, eaten slowly from the same wooden bowls that carried the morning's tsampa. The steam from the soup rises in lazy, swirling patterns, carrying the savory scent of salt and garlic. As the porter eats, he feels the warmth of the food spreading through his tired muscles, a liquid restoration that mends the micro-tears of the day's exertion. The physical sensation of the warm bowl against his palms is a grounding ritual, a reminder of the earth's bounty and the simple pleasures of a life lived in balance. There is no talk of the future or the past. There is only the soup, the fire, and the comforting presence of those nearby. Outside the village is a landscape of profound, undisturbed peace. The stone sentinels of the houses stand firm against the encroaching cold, their slate roofs now silvered by the rising moon. The mist has returned, but it is no longer the creeping, mysterious vapor of the dawn. It is a soft, protective blanket that muffles the world and isolates the village in a cocoon of silence. The only movement is the slow, rhythmic rotation of the great prayer wheel near the shrine, turned by the late-night wind. The bronze bells chime once, twice, a sound so thin and pure it seems to hang in the air long after the vibration has ceased. This is the music of 1840, the sound of a world that knows how to rest, a world that understands the necessity of the dark. As the porter finishes his meal and prepares for sleep, he performs one final task. He takes a handful of white ash from the edge of the hearth and carefully covers the remaining embers. This does not extinguish the fire. It preserves it, keeping the heat locked within the charcoal for the morning's rekindling. This banking of the fire is a metaphor for the night itself, a time of preservation, of gathering strength, and of holding the light in a state of quiet potential. The room grows darker, the amber glow fading into a deep, somber red, but the warmth remains, a steady, invisible presence that guards the sleepers against the mountain's chill. He settles beneath the heavy blankets, feeling the weight of the wool anchoring him to the bed. His body, which was a machine of movement all day, now becomes a vessel of stillness. The aches in his shoulders and the tightness in his calves begin to dissolve into the softness of the mattress, replaced by a profound, heavy relaxation that starts at the toes and moves upward to the mind. He listens to the wind sighing through the eaves of the roof, a sound that is both lonely and incredibly comforting. It is the sound of the infinite mountain, the sound of the world that exists beyond the walls, yet he is safe within his sanctuary of stone and wool. The night sky of 1840 is a map of the eternal. As we look through his eyes at the shimmering stars, we realize that the peace of the Himalayas is not found in the absence of struggle, but in the presence of meaning. The tea porter's life is hard, yes, but it is a life that is entirely whole. Every action has a purpose, every object has a history, and every night has a promise of rest. The cycle of the dawn, the path, the burden, and the hearth is a rhythm that matches the heartbeat of the earth. In this quiet moment, before sleep finally takes hold, the world is perfect in its simplicity. Let your own mind drift with the porter as he gazes at the stars. Feel the cool air on your face and the heavy warmth of the blankets on your chest. The village is asleep, the tea is safe in the sheds, and the mountain is watching over all. There is no need for anything more. The silence of 1840 is a gift, a timeless space where the soul can expand and find its own true north. As the moon climbs higher, casting long silver shadows over the terraced gardens and the silent paths, we surrender to the deep restorative peace of the high Himalayas. The night is long, the rest is deep, and the world is exactly as it should be. As the night reaches its deepest point, the world of 1840 enters a state of absolute crystalline translucence. The moon, now a brilliant silver orb hanging high over the Annapurna range, casts a light so intense and pure that it transforms the landscape into a dreamscape of monochrome beauty. The snow-capped peaks, which were blue at dawn and golden at dusk, are now a blinding, ethereal white, glowing with an internal luminosity that seems to vibrate against the deep black of the space between the stars. This is the silvering, a moment of peak atmospheric clarity where the boundary between the physical and the spiritual feels as thin as a breath of mountain air. In the village below, the stone houses appear like ancient slumbering monuments, their every detail etched in the stark silver light. The silence at this hour is not merely an absence of sound. It is a physical presence, a heavy, velvet weight that settles over the valley. It is so profound that if you were standing on a porch you could hear the microscopic tink of the frost forming on the slate roofs, the sound of water turning to ice in the stone gutters. This silence is the ultimate luxury of the mountain life, a profound auditory sanctuary that allows the mind to reach back through the layers of time. In the year 1840, there are no echoes of the future to disturb this peace. There is only the long, unbroken memory of the mountain, a history written in the slow movement of the glaciers and the steady growth of the cedars. The porters, deep in their wool-heavy sleep, are part of this memory, their dreams weaving together the threads of the day's journey with the stories of those who came before. The air inside the dwellings has cooled to a crisp, refreshing temperature, but it remains perfectly still. The scent of the juniper smoke has faded to a faint, sweet memory, replaced by the smell of absolute purity, the scent of frozen stone and high-altitude air that has been filtered through 1,000 miles of wilderness. This is the breath of the mountain, a cold, invigorating essence that seeps through the cracks in the wooden shutters and settles in the lungs of the sleepers, providing a deep biological nourishment. The rhythm of the breathing in the room is slow and incredibly steady. a collective pulse that matches the turning of the celestial wheel outside. There is no restlessness here, no tossing and turning. The fatigue of the mountain is a heavy, benevolent hand that holds the body in a state of perfect unmoving repose. In this silvered night, the tea in the storage sheds continues its silent, chemical evolution. The cold air and the high-altitude pressure work upon the compressed leaves, refining the flavors and locking in the essence of the 1840 harvest. The tea is not just a cargo, it is a living record of the year's weather, the quality of the spring snowmelt, and the skill of the pluckers. As it rests in the dark, it gathers the stillness of the mountain, becoming a beverage of meditation for someone in a distant land who will one day drink it and feel a sudden, inexplicable sense of peace. The connection between this frozen, silvered village and the rest of the world is a thread of flavor and aroma, a bridge of sensory memory that spans the continents. Looking out over the terraced gardens in the moonlight, one can see the tea bushes as dark, rounded shapes, each one capped with a delicate layer of silver frost. The gardens look like a giant staircase leading up to the heavens, the stone retaining walls casting long, geometric shadows across the slopes. There is a sacred geometry in this landscape, a sense of order and purpose that is visible only in the absolute clarity of the night. Every terrace, every path and every stone has been placed with a quiet reverence for the mountain's form. This is the art of 1840, the art of living in a way that enhances the beauty of the world rather than detracting from it. As we linger in this silvered moment, we are invited to reflect on the nature of our own rest. The peace of the Himalayan night is not something that needs to be earned or manufactured. It is a natural state that we simply need to allow ourselves to enter. Like the porter beneath his heavy blankets, we can surrender the burdens of the day to the silence of the mountain. We can let the cold, pure air wash away the clutter of our thoughts, leaving only the essential, luminous core of our being. The silvering is a reminder that even in the darkness there is a profound, guiding light, a beauty that is always present if we only have the stillness to see it. The moon begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, and the light changes once more, taking on a softer, more pearlescent quality. The shadows begin to shift, stretching out across the valley floor as the world prepares for the first faint whispers of the new dawn. But the transition is slow, unhurried, and incredibly peaceful. There is no rush to meet the day. The night has done its work, the bodies are restored, and the mountain has been honored. The stillness of 1840 remains unbroken, a timeless sanctuary of ice, stone, and memory. Let your mind rest on the image of the silvered peak. Feel the absolute, unshakable solidity of the mountain beneath you and the vast, starry infinite above you. You are held in the center of this world, protected by the stone and the wool, nourished by the cold air and the deep silence. There is no past to regret and no future to fear. There is only the silvered present, the steady heartbeat of the mountain, and the profound restorative grace of a sleep that knows no end. The world of 1840 is a world of absolute safety, a place where the heart can finally find its home in the quiet of the high dawn. We drift now into the final reaches of the night, following the silver light as it fades into the soft grey promise of the morning to come. As the silver moon finally dips behind the jagged, crystalline crown of the western ridges, the world of 1840 enters the blue hour, that ethereal suspended bridge between the deepest, most silent night and the first hesitant hint of morning. This is the quietest moment in the entire Himalayan cycle, a time when the universe seems to hold its breath in a state of absolute indigo-tinted suspension. The intense, sharp brilliance of the midnight moonlight has softened into a pervasive, monochromatic wash of deep sapphire and charcoal, filling the valleys like a slow-moving tide of cool, liquid ink. The snow on the distant peaks no longer glows with a reflective glare. Instead, it hums with a deep, spectral blue, appearing more like a fading memory of ice than a solid physical entity. In this profound twilight, the air reaches its maximum density and stillness, becoming so heavy and pure that it feels like a physical embrace against the stone walls of the village. The moisture in the atmosphere has crystallized completely, hanging invisible in the air as microscopic diamond dust that catches the faint ambient light of the disappearing stars, creating a world that is simultaneously dark and strangely luminous. Inside the thick, earthen-plastered walls of the stone dwellings, The tea porters are immersed in the final, most restorative stage of their long slumber. This is the hour of the lingering dream, a psychological space where the mind is no longer processing the grueling physical fatigue of the trail or the heavy pressure of the Namlo strap, but is instead drifting through the vast symbolic landscapes of the mountain's ancient soul. The breathing in the room has become so perfectly synchronized that it sounds like the slow, rhythmic swell of a calm subterranean sea, a steady rise and fall that matches the internal pulse of the mountain itself. The warmth preserved beneath the heavy, hand-loomed yak wool blankets has reached a perfect biological equilibrium with the cooling air of the room, creating a microclimate of absolute safety and comfort. Every muscle in the porters' bodies is entirely slack, every tendon released from the tension of the day's load, and every joint anchored by the profound gravity of a rest well earned. The scent of the room is now one of absolute settled peace, a faint, lingering perfume of cold stone, well-seasoned cedar wood, and the deep, clean, almost metallic scent of the high-altitude night. In this blue stillness, the very concept of time begins to dissolve into the shadows. There is no past to reflect upon, no future to prepare for, and no urgency to the ticking of a world far below. There is only this infinite indigo present, a timeless void where the soul is allowed to expand to the width of the valley. The mountain itself seems to be leaning in, a silent, benevolent guardian that ensures the absolute sanctuary of the settlement. You can feel the immense, silent weight of the Himalayas pressing down on the earth, a comforting and grounding pressure that anchors the spirit and stilled the heart. The world is a sealed vessel of tranquility, protected by miles of vertical rock and centuries of unwavering tradition. As you imagine yourself lying there in the year 1840, wrapped in the coarse warm wool and breathing the thin sweet air, you feel a sense of profound, unshakable belonging. You are not a visitor to this history. You are a vital part of its rhythmic beating heart, a single thread in a tapestry of endurance that stretches back to the beginning of time. The blue hour is the time of the great transition, a slow-motion alchemy of light and shadow. The stars are beginning to fade from the velvet sky, not by disappearing, but by being gently absorbed into the expanding pale violet glow of the eastern horizon. The outlines of the tea gardens, the winding stone paths, and the ancient gnarled cedars begin to re-emerge from the depths of the night, appearing first as soft velvet shapes before gaining the definition of the waking world. The village is waking up in a state of grace, a gradual unfolding of consciousness that mirrors the slow, natural opening of a mountain flower. There is no shock to the senses, no sudden noise to break the spell, only the gentle and inevitable return of the light. The silence is so thick and textured you can almost taste it, a cool mineral flavor that speaks of high glaciers, ancient granite, and the eternal peace of the high places. Let your mind rest entirely within this blue tapestry. Feel the coolness of the air on your forehead and the incredible radiating heat of the blankets against your chest. The weight of the world has been set aside, replaced by the weight of the mountain's silence. You are safe, you are warm, and you are held in the center of a history that moves at the speed of a single, peaceful breath. There is no need to move, no need to think, only the requirement to exist in this moment of blue perfection. The world is waiting, but the wait is beautiful, a period of quiet potential before the first spark of the morning fire. As the indigo begins to lift, you feel a deep, resonant calm settling into your very bones, a gift from the year 1840 that will stay with you long after the dream has ended. The blue hour is your sanctuary, the final threshold of rest before the cycle begins anew. Now, as the profound velvet indigo of the blue hour begins to thin into a pale, translucent lavender and a soft, pearlescent grey, we return once more to the very threshold where our journey first began. The cycle is complete, but in this timeless realm of 1840, it has not ended. It has merely transitioned into a state of permanent shimmering peace. From the low, square chimneys of the stone dwellings, the first ribbons of pale grey smoke begin to curl lazily into the damp morning air. This is the visual poetry of the awakening hearth, the ancient embers, tucked safely beneath a blanket of white ash all through the freezing night, are now being whispered back to life by the gentle breath of a porter's wife. As she fans the charcoal, a soft amber glow begins to illuminate the earthen floor, and the scent of the burning juniper, sweet, resinous, and deeply grounding, spreads outward in slow, fragrant ripples. It mingles with the sharp, crystalline smell of the high-altitude dew and the heavy, earthy aroma of the mountain mist that rolls down from the glaciers like a silent white river. The world of the Himalayas is preparing to breathe again, but for you, the traveller who has walked these misty paths in your mind, the journey has reached its final, most blissful destination of absolute unshakable rest. The heavy, comforting weight of history is no longer a burden to be carried across steep ridges, but has transformed into a thick, warm sanctuary of security that settles over your entire being like a hand-woven shroud of peace. The rhythmic, hypnotic sounds of the mountain morning have all blended into a single, seamless lullaby that plays at the very edge of your consciousness, pulling you deeper into the pillows. In the far distance, you can hear the muffled, rhythmic clack-thud of a wooden staff against a smooth stone, a sound so faint it feels like a memory of movement rather than movement itself. You hear the soft, rhythmic shush of heavy wool garments as someone stirs in a nearby house, and the low, resonant, almost musical hum of a clay pot heating over a new fire. These sounds do not startle, they are the acoustic anchors of a world that knows exactly how to wake without haste. Your mind is now as still and clear as a high-altitude glacial lake, a mirror of dark water reflecting only the vast, pale sky and the steady, enduring silhouettes of the snow-capped peaks. Every microscopic detail we have explored together, the texture of the silver-tipped moss, the earthy, fermented scent of the compressed tea leaves, the cool, solid touch of the granite walls, and the flickering amber light of the juniper fire, is now a permanent part of your own internal landscape. As you lie here, the mist rolls over the slate roofs in slow, rhythmic waves, wrapping the village in a final protective embrace that isolates this moment from the noise of the future and the clatter of the world below. The light in the eastern sky is growing, but it remains soft, diffused, and entirely gentle on the eyes, a wash of pale rose and dusty gold that does not demand you wake, but simply invites you to surrender even more deeply to the weight of your blankets. There is no hurry to meet the day, no requirement to lift a load, and no thought of the long miles ahead. You are drifting now on the cool, steady current of the mountain's breath, moving deeper and deeper into the quiet, eternal dawn of 1840. The boundaries between your current reality and this misty mountain village are fading away into a soft, hazy blur, leaving only the profound, unbroken silence of the high peaks to guide you into a dreamless, restorative slumber. Imagine the fibers of the heavy yak wool blanket that covers you. Each thread was spun by hand, carrying the natural oils of the animal and the warmth of the sun that shone on the high pastures. Feel that weight, a grounding, physical presence that anchors your body to the earth and tells your heart that it is safe to slow down. The air in the room is crisp and cool, a refreshing contrast to the warmth of the hearth, acting as a natural tonic for your lungs. With every slow, rhythmic breath you take, you are inhaling the purity of the mountains, the scent of ancient ice, the mineral tang of the rock, and the sweetness of the wild rhododendron wood. Your body has become a vessel of stillness, a silent participant in the great, slow-motion ballet of the waking mountain. The tea in the storage sheds is silent, the paths are empty, and the great peaks are watching over you with a benevolence that spans centuries. The dawn is here, but it is a dawn that never ends, a silvered world of grace where time is no longer a sequence of minutes, but a steady rhythm of peace. Your breath is the wind sighing through the branches of the ancient Himalayan cedars. Your heartbeat is the slow tectonic pulse of the granite earth itself. You are moving beyond the reach of words, beyond the reach of light, into a place where the soul is allowed to simply be. The colours of the room, the deep terracotta of the walls, the dark mahogany of the rafters, the golden honey of the bamboo baskets, all dissolve into a soft monochromatic shade of rest. You are sinking through layers of history, through layers of mist, into the very heart of the mountain's silence. Deep, deep and heavy sleep. The world is safe, the history is written in the permanent ink of the stars. You are exactly where you are meant to be, held in the cradle of the Himalayas at the quietest hour of 1840. The mist settles over the valley floor, hiding the paths and the gardens. The light softens into a whisper, a mere suggestion of a day to come. The mountain breathes a long, slow sigh of contentment, and you breathe with it. The journey is done. The load is gone. Welcome to Sleepy History with Wesley, your personal sanctuary of ancient tales. Here, we blend authentic historical events with gentle AI technology to recreate immersive, soothing journeys through time. This channel is crafted specifically for relaxation and sleep support. TAND is not a substitute for professional medical advice. For your safety, please do not listen while driving or operating machinery. Now, close your eyes and let history carry you into a peaceful sleep.